Chapter 2774. Looks like you really like me. Dmo Xian's voice was extremely light, without any extra emotions. Yi Qingluo expressed that this Dmo Xian looked like an abstinent male god. An inviolable look. She smiled with her eyes curved, seemingly very happy. Yes, I like you very much. The young lady didn't conceal her loving gaze. This made Dmo Xian's thin lips inexplicably pulled into an arc. But the next moment, there was another inexplicable emotion that began to disturb his heart. There was a voice in his mind. It kept telling him, "Push away the young lady. Stay away from the young lady." Gradually, it formed a very powerful thought. Kill the young lady. His brows tightened, feeling a little strange about this inexplicable emotion. Obviously, he was hugging the young lady, flirting with the young lady. Under this kind of atmosphere, it was impossible to have the thought of killing the young lady. But this kind of thought really existed. His body had a strange feeling. Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes flashed a trace of fluctuation. He once again fixed his gaze on Yi Qingluo. He wanted to find an answer from Yi Qingluo. The young lady was still smiling. A pair of sparkling eyes, as if bearing thousands of peach blossoms. Reflected in her eyes was only his shadow. For some reason, Dmo Xian had already abandoned the strange emotion in his heart. His thin lips moved, spitting out a word. All right. As soon as he said that word, a cold light flashed in his eyes. The smile on the young lady's face became even more brilliant, like a blooming poppy, releasing its most seductive power. Dmo Xian's mind moved. Suddenly his big palm covered the back of Yi Qingluo's head, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. This kiss was very affectionate, gentle, as if water could be squeezed out. Yi Qingluo almost indulged in this kind of torturous kiss. But Dmo Xian only kissed familiarity, until his breath covered her layer after layer. He released her. Yi Qingluo's eyes were stained with a trace of crystal, because of his kiss. He let go. Yi Qingluo's thoughts were still empty, as she grabbed Dmo Xian's collar. Staring at Yi Qingluo, the man's eyes dimmed slightly, covered with a layer of desire. What a lovely little vixen. He really wanted to devour her bite by bite. However, the timing and location were both wrong. Thinking of the young girl's cunning, he smiled charmingly and said, "Including sleeping with me." Dmo Xian's expression darkened further. Forget it, since the girl wanted him to accompany her. He accompanied her. Perhaps after obtaining her, they would feel that she was no different from other women. He wouldn't be affected by this woman anymore. Dmo Xian retracted his breath and tightened his arms, bringing her petite body into his embrace. His low and husky voice moved closer to her ear and laughed. "This is the interest. After tasting it, it's not bad. I will reluctantly agree to your deal." Yi Qingluo was still in a daze. He couldn't help but sigh. Dmo Xian's honey trap really made her unable to stop herself. However, at least he had reached an agreement with him. As long as Dmo Xian sat with her properly, and finished participating in this Saintess ceremony, the rest of the matter would be discussed in private. Yi Qingluo hugged his waist, and buried her head in his chest. The man didn't resist, nor did he have any intention to push her away. Yi Qingluo was assured as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist, and walked towards their position. Chapter 2775. No matter if it was Yi Qingluo's real identity, or her real looks. Furthermore, the overlord was present at the scene, and even displayed affection with Yi Qingluo in public, breaking the rumors of abandonment. All kinds of things. All the guests who were watching were shocked. They recalled that they had previously spoken out to humiliate Yi Qingluo, belittling the imperial palace in front of the emissary of the Palace of Darkness and the vice palace master. Their hearts were in their throats. However, the two people who had disturbed everyone's mind did not seem to be affected at all. And lovingly returned to his seat. He even acted as if there was no one else around, showing off his affection and feeding him food. Naturally it was Yi Qingluo who was feeding Dmo Xian. Peach, who was sitting by the side in a daze, looked at Yi Qingluo's smiling face, peeling grapes for Dmo Xian and feeding him. Her mouth twitched. "After not wearing the mask, you can let go of yourself?" Just now when he saw the two of them, the atmosphere was clearly different. His Majesty's aura had also changed. The group of them thought that Lord Dizun was suffering from the effects of the centrifugal goo. He was about to flip out on the spot. He didn't expect to be stuffed with dog food instead. Overlord he. Xiao Jin held Yan Xiaoyi, whose expression wasn't very good, as he looked at Dmo Xian worriedly. His centrifugal force goo, will it affect? No problem. Yiqing Luo placed the grape into Dmo Xian's mouth. The man sat on the cushion lazily. His feet were slightly bent. One hand rests on the knee. He looked lazy and noble to the extreme. When Yiqing Luo's grape was brought to his lips, he lazily opened his mouth. His thin lips brushed past Yiqing Luo's fingers faintly. Yiqing Luo's fingertips trembled, but she didn't say a word as she continued to peel the grape skin while glancing sideways at Xiao Jin. The Overlord has always been honest and trustworthy. He promised me that he will accompany me till the end of the grand ceremony, so he will stay till the end of the grand ceremony. Her words were directed at Xiao Jin, but in actual fact, it was for Dmo Xian to hear. As smart as Dizun was, how could he not understand the deeper meaning of the girl's words? He narrowed his long and narrow eyes. His thin lips curled up into an extremely shallow arc. When the girl gave him another grape, he opened his mouth and bit the girl's finger. A slight prickling pain made Yiqing Luo frown as she stared at him resentfully. Dmo Xian loosened his grip and casually shifted his gaze onto Yiqing Luo's face as he gave a casual smile. This lord is not an honest and trustworthy person. Everything depends on this lord's mood. Yiqing Luo. Fine, you're the boss. Couldn't she spoil him to death? Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and smiled. Yes, I will definitely serve the Overlord well, so that the Overlord can maintain his mood. Her voice was dry and stiff. Even when he smiled, it felt like a fake smile. Xiao Jin and the others couldn't help but shiver when they heard the word concubine, rubbing their arms. However, a certain man was in a good mood and nodded with satisfaction. Yiqing Luo. After his goo worm was cured, he would definitely kneel on the washboard. Yiqing Luo suppressed the surging emotions in her heart, and was about to take the grapes to serve this Buddha properly. Her peripheral vision suddenly caught a glimpse of something. Her slender brows creased as she immediately drew out her handkerchief and wiped off the grape juice on her fingers. Chapter 2776. Dmo Xian raised his brows, puzzled by Yiqing Luo's actions. Was she not going to serve him anymore? Yiqing Luo didn't look at him as she lifted her feet and walked towards a certain direction. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as he slowly propped himself up. That was where Miao Yi was. At this moment, Miao Yi was standing beside the corpses of the Palace of Darkness guards, calmly commanding the Miao guards to carry the corpses. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao stood beside her, their brows tightly furrowed as they spoke to Miao Yi. His emotions seemed to be somewhat agitated. From time to time, Miao Yi would glance sideways and respond to the two elders. Meanwhile, the two elders' faces turned uglier and uglier. He seemed to be arguing with Miao Yi about something. Yiqing Luo also saw this scene, hence she immediately rushed over. Looking at Second Elder Miao's fawning attitude towards the Palace of Darkness just now. Later on, the Vice Palace Master of Gloomy Palace appeared. Second Elder Miao's heart was probably biased towards the Dark Nether Palace. He might even vent his anger on Miao Yi because of this. Although Miao Yi looked very calm and collected at the moment, and her way of doing things also had her own style. However, Miao Yi was only a 14 or 15-year-old girl after all. Before returning to the Miao tribe, she was still that simple-minded girl who would occasionally reveal a hint of cuteness. Miao Yi had undergone such an earth-shattering change in just a month. Thinking about it, Miao Yi must have had a very hard time in the Miao tribe this month. But Yiqing Luo didn't intend to care about Miao Yi's hard work for this 1 month. After all, this was the path that Miao Yi had chosen. Become the Miao tribe leader, become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. The pressure on Miao Yi would be even greater than now. The days ahead would only be more difficult than now. These were things that Miao Yi had to bear. Before he even got close to the corpse of the Palace of Darkness guard, Second Elder Miao's angry voice rang out. Miao Yi. Since you want to be the leader of the Meow tribe and become the saintess, shouldn't you prioritize the interests of the Meow tribe? Fourth Elder Meow also tried his best to persuade her. That's right, Miss Meow. You are the only direct descendant of the Meow tribe. Everything in the Meow tribe will belong to you. For the sake of the Meow tribe, it's just a small matter to her. However, this will be of great help to the Meow tribe. No. Meow Yi spat out the word without hesitation. Her face was cold and gloomy. He was probably annoyed by the two elders' harassment. After saying this, she turned around and was about to return to the waiting room for the selection of the Holy Maiden. Second Elder Meow immediately chased after her. Meow Yi, what do you want? Whatever conditions you have, just state them. I don't want anything. Meow Yi halted her footsteps as she decisively rejected. Second Elder Meow, I won't open my mouth to Qing Luo. She's my friend, not a tool to be used. Isn't it normal for friends to help each other? Second Elder Meow was still unwilling to give up. Meow Yi could not be bothered to say anything more to Second Elder Meow. Suddenly, he heard a sweet voice with a smile. What are you talking to me about? Meow Yi was stunned as her gaze turned towards the direction of the voice. She saw that young lady who was clad in raging flames looking at her with a light smile. Meow Yi's heart quivered slightly. Chapter 2777. Oh. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she had some guesses in her heart, but she still asked, My matter? What matter? Second Elder Meow's attitude made Yi Qing Luo's smile. Add a tinge of ridicule. These years, status and ability were indeed the most important. Originally she thought that Second Elder Meow would because of the appearance of the Secluded Palace's second palace lord. Placing all the bets on Secluded Palace. She had not expected. Second Elder Meow was leaning towards her. After knowing her real identity, trying to get closer to her through Meow Yi? As expected, after hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, Second Elder Meow gave a flattering smile. Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Meow have a close relationship, so it's most suitable for eldest young Miss Meow to say it. Saying that, he stretched out his hand and pulled Meow Yi's arm, pushing her in front of Yi Qing Luo. Eldest young Miss, why are you still standing here? Didn't you have something to say to Miss Yi earlier? Meow Yi's willowy brows creased tightly as she impatiently shook off Second Elder Meow's hand. Meow Yi. Second Elder Meow warned her in a low voice as he took a careful look at Yi Qing Luo and immediately smiled. Perhaps my tone earlier was a little too heavy and made eldest young Miss unhappy. I'll leave first, Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Meow. You guys continue chatting. Saying that, he nudged Fourth Elder Meow who was standing by the side. The two of them prepared to leave. What's the matter? Yi Qing Luo looked at Meow Yi's steely green face as she laughed lightly. Between us, what else can't be said? The two elders who were leaving instantly pricked up their ears as they simultaneously slowed down their footsteps. Meow Yi pursed her lips as her expression sunk as she opened her mouth. Sorry. Why are you apologizing? Yi Qing Luo smiled gently. Meow Yi was stunned as she raised her eyes and stared blankly at Yi Qing Luo's alluring exquisite face. Ever since Yi Qing Luo brought her back to the secret room in the Peach Blossom restaurant, Yi Qing Luo had never intentionally concealed her own identity in front of her. From the beginning in the Peach Blossom restaurant's secret room, Meow Yi already knew Yi Luo's real identity. The one who was hailed as the little hero of the West Continent, the one who saved countless of students, the female version of the miracle, Yi Qing Luo. She had heard of Yi Qing Luo's name. He had also envied Yi Qing Luo's ability. There was a time when he had fantasized about it. If only he had half of Yi Qing Luo's boldness and determination. She would not have to leave the Meow tribe, the place that belonged to her. Meow Yi knew of Yi Qing Luo's identity, but she had never asked about it. Nor was she curious about it. She knew that Yi Qing Luo treated her as a friend. That was enough. If not for Yi Qing Luo, she would still be wandering outside, unable to return to the place where she belonged. Meow Yi's eyes were a little dazed. His eyes gradually turned red. After a long while, her long eyelashes trembled and she said in a nasal voice, It's nothing. I just wanted to tell you that I will do my best in this saintess selection. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she raised her hand and rubbed Miao Yi's furry little head. "Amen, all the best, I believe in you." Miao Yi's eyes reddened even more as she felt the warmth of a big sister's palm. Since she was young, she had never enjoyed the so-called familial love. The so-called elder sister had never given her any warmth. Today, from Yi Qing Luo's body, she could feel this warmth. Chapter 2778. She closed her cheek, feeling the warm touch. A smile gradually appeared in Miao Yi's eyes. She revealed a smile as she looked at Yi Qing Luo and nodded her head vigorously. Not far away, the two elders who were standing among the Miao tribe guards who were continuously carrying the guards of the Palace of Darkness away saw this scene. They looked at each other and smiled in satisfaction. However, in the next instant, she saw Miao Yi and Yi Qing Luo saying goodbye and turning around to leave. Second elder Miao's face darkened. He quickly walked over and stopped Miao Yi. "Did you say what you wanted to say? Get out of my way." Miao Yi frowned and tried to pass second elder Miao. However, second elder Miao moved to block Miao Yi and asked again, "Have you said what I asked you to say to Miss Yi?" "No." Miao Yi's voice was very calm, and her emotions did not fluctuate. "Can you move aside now? I still have to prepare for the upcoming Saintess selection." Miao Yi. Second elder Miao was infuriated by her attitude and tightened his grip on Miao Yi's slender wrist. "This is all for the good of the Miao tribe. Since you're so close to her, how could she not help you with just a few words?" Miao Yi was getting impatient. The anger in second elder Miao's heart grew. He was about to speak. Behind him, Yi Qing Luo's cold voice floated over. "Second elder Miao, what's going on? Is the dignified young mistress of the Miao tribe someone that a mere elder like you can drag around?" Meanwhile, a dark force hurricane struck. It brushed past second elder Miao's hand, which was holding Miao Yi's hand. Second elder Miao let go of Miao Yi in pain. He raised his hand and saw that the back of his hand was already covered in blood. Just a slight movement of his finger would cause the wound that had been swept by the hurricane to reopen, and the pain was excruciating. However, second elder Miao did not dare to show a dark expression. He endured the pain coming from the back of his hand and smiled, nodding repeatedly. "Miss Yi is right. I have overstepped my boundaries." Yi Qing Luo raised her brows slightly as she slowly walked over. She placed a hand on Miao Yi's shoulder lazily. He leaned against Miao Yi. Their posture was intimate and natural. She tilted her head and smiled wickedly. Just now, second elder Miao even said that his tone towards Yi was a little harsh and made Yi unhappy. "I'm very curious, in this Miao tribe, just how much authority does an elder have?" Second elder Miao's body stiffened and his face paled. Miss Yi has misunderstood." Misunderstanding?" Yi Qing Luo's tone rose as her long and narrow eyes squinted. "Yi is the Miao clan leader's only direct bloodline, and is the future Miao clan leader. Furthermore, she is currently a candidate for the Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe. She has the protection of the Holy Maiden. How dare you, an elder of the Miao tribe, disrespect Yi?" She paused for a moment before her tone suddenly became more serious. "You're tugging at Yi, and your attitude is terrible. I can't help but think deeper. Could it be that second elder Miao is trying to take away Yi's authority and replace her?" Second elder Miao's face instantly turned pale. He hurriedly shook his head and anxiously explained, "I didn't. I've been in the Miao tribe for decades. How could I have such thoughts? Miss Yi, please don't misunderstand." "Misunderstanding?" Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened as her charming eyes deepened. No one could tell the real meaning behind her smile. Obviously, it was a devastatingly beautiful smile. Obviously, it was a pair of alluring eyes that made one's heart flutter. But second elder Miao was being stared at by this pair of alluring eyes. When this smile was reflected in his eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 2779. Second elder Miao felt a chill run down his spine. Wrinkles spread across his pale face. His body trembled and his voice trembled. It's my fault. I've broken the Miao tribe's rules." Yi Qing Luo's fingertip tapped on Miao Yi's shoulder as she opened her mouth lazily. "Future clan leader, How do you think we should punish those who break the Miao tribe's regulations? Miao Yi was stunned, not expecting Yi Qingluo to shift the topic to her. But when he met Yi Qingluo's smiling eyes, Miao Yi suddenly understood. Yi Qingluo was helping her to stabilize her position in the Miao tribe. Miao Yi's heart felt warm. This was the first time someone stood in her shoes and considered everything for her. So, Yi Qingluo knew right from the start. Why were Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao pestering her? Second Elder Miao's request was actually very simple. She only hoped that she could make use of the friendship between her and Yi Qingluo. Let Yi Qingluo step forward to show the guests that she would stand on the Miao tribe's side, becoming their backing. Because Yi Qingluo not only represented Yi Qingluo, there was also the overlord and the power of the imperial palace. As long as Yi Qingluo agreed, this was very beneficial to the future development of the Miao tribe. At least, those who wanted to take advantage of the Miao tribe's current situation to attack them and invade their territory would give up on that idea. However, Miao Yi didn't want that to happen. Yi Qingluo had helped her enough. Yi Qingluo indeed treated her extremely well, treating her like a younger sister. But she couldn't be insatiable just because Yi Qingluo treated her well. Moreover, it had always been Yi Qingluo who had been sacrificing for her. As for her, she had never done anything for Yi Qingluo. How could she possibly make use of their friendship to make Yi Qingluo open her mouth? The minute Yi Qingluo announced in public, she would become the backing of the Miao tribe. It meant that in the future he would be involved with the Miao tribe. Miao Yi wasn't willing to push her own burden onto Yi Qingluo. Because of this, Miao Yi had always refused. But now, Yi Qingluo used her own way to express her attitude. It wasn't a big publicity. Instead, he used his actions to show it. Yi Qingluo was teaching her to punish the chicken to warn the monkey, stabilizing his position in the Miao tribe. It was also a good opportunity to show that she, Miao Yi, was not someone to be trifled with. On Miao Yi's face, the first time she met Yi Qingluo surfaced, that radiant and innocent smile. Yi Qingluo had already helped her to such an extent. Then, she would have to walk on her own, one step at a time. Miao Yi's eyes firmly looked at Yi Qingluo. Soon after, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. I'm afraid Second Elder has been in a high position for far too long, Miao Yi said, her voice icy cold. You no longer consider yourself to be Second Elder. Second Elder Miao shuddered and knelt in front of Miao Yi with a thud. When Fourth Elder Miao saw this, he immediately knelt down. Miao Yi's expression was calm, without a hint of panic. She looked down at Second Elder Miao and continued. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. Second Elder Miao should know the Miao tribe's rules better than anyone else. This person who broke the Miao tribe's rules, how to deal with him. Second Elder Miao should be clearer than anyone else. Young miss, spare me. Chapter 2780. According to the rules, Second Elder Miao offended her superiors and had the intention to replace me. She should be directly stripped of her status as an elder and sent to the Gu Garden to be reduced to a Gu slave. Miao Yi enunciated each and every word in a calm tone. When he heard the words Gu slave, Second Elder Miao's face was ashen. Gu Garden. That was the place where Miao tribe's Gu worms were abundant. As for Gu slaves, it wasn't just to raise those Gu worms. Moreover, every time a new Gu worm was researched, the Gu slave would become the test subject of the Gu worm. If they were lucky, they could survive, and because of the new Gu worm, they could develop the latent energy in their bodies. If he was unlucky, he would be devoured by the new Gu worm. That was the place that all the Miao tribe members feared the most. He looked at Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao's pale faces. Yi Qingluo laughed softly. She tilted her head and leaned against Miao Yi's shoulder. Her voice was extremely lazy. This punishment is not bad. Miao Yi smiled as well. Her confidence grew as well. She was about to continue speaking. However, the slender and soft fingers on his shoulder suddenly knocked gently. Miao Yi was stunned as she realized that Yi Qingluo had something to tell her. She glanced sideways. Yi Qingluo didn't say anything, only smiling faintly. There seemed to be some sort of emotion hidden in those deep and beautiful eyes. Miao Yi's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he seemed to have understood something. She shifted her gaze again, and when she looked at second elder Miao, the flames on her body had already gradually calmed down. She lowered her eyes and looked at the elder kneeling in front of her. But Miao Yi purposely dragged out her last syllable. These two words seemed to give second elder Miao hope. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Miao Yi. However, second elder Miao is an elder of the Miao tribe after all. You have worked diligently for the Miao tribe for decades. The corners of Miao Yi's mouth curled into a faint smile. Seeing that second elder Miao has a good attitude in admitting his mistake, I can pretend that your rudeness towards me did not happen. But if there is a next time, there will be no next time. There would be no next time. There will be no next time. Second elder Miao's anxious and uneasy heart felt much more at ease the moment he heard Miao Yi's tone. With a pale face, he repeatedly promised that he wouldn't dare to do it again. Miao Yi widened her smile in satisfaction. At this moment, the finger on Miao Yi's shoulder moved again. Shortly after, the soft and delicate body that was attached to Miao Yi's body slowly pulled away. This time, Miao Yi understood without the slightest bit of hesitation. She took the initiative to help the two elders up and said, "Elders, please don't kneel. In the future, the Miao tribe will still need the help of the two of you." A slap in the face, and then a carrot. This was the message that Yiqing Luo transmitted to her. Yiqing Luo was extremely satisfied with Miao Yi's way of doing things. She raised her hand and stroked Miao Yi's head again. The dignified look on Miao Yi's face immediately faded away as she resumed a young lady's radiant smile. She raised her head and looked at Yiqing Luo. "Qing Luo, thank you. All right, hurry up and prepare. We've been delayed by the secluded palace for such a long time. If we drag on any longer, the sky will turn dark." Yiqing Luo placed both her hands on Miao Yi's shoulder, pushing her towards the direction of the Miao tribe's inner region. Chapter 2781. Miao Main Building. In the long corridor on the second floor, stood two figures. This position coincidentally allowed them to have a panoramic view of the entire plaza. Standing slightly in front was a lady dressed in simple Miao Miao clothing. Her facial features were exquisite and gentle like water. There were some wrinkles at the corner of her eyes, and she looked to be around 30 years old. The lady's gaze followed Miao Yi closely until Miao Yi's figure disappeared around the corner, before she retracted her gaze. The lady's delicate brows creased. Eldest young Miss Miao's change is really huge. Behind the lady was an elderly dressed in a white long robe. He had white brows, white hair, and a white beard. His figure was slightly plump, and he looked very benevolent. The elderly stroked his white beard. This is all because of that young lady named Yiqing Luo who changed eldest young Miss Miao. He paused for a moment as his white brows curved, filled with smiles. Eldest young Miss Miao being able to grow up is a good thing for the Miao tribe. The lady remained silent for a moment as she nodded her head faintly. Soon after, his gaze was fixed on the extremely dazzling young girl with a face that could topple cities. After some time, her red lips moved slightly as she spoke softly. "Let's go, the sacred maiden selection is about to begin. We should go meet this lady who can change eldest young Miss Miao. Let's see how much magical power she has." Miao Tribe Plaza. Yiqing Luo sent Miao Yi off with her eyes. She then took small steps back to DMO Xian's side. She had just gotten close when she sensed that there was a kind of frosty cold air flowing in the air. Yiqing Luo's footsteps paused as she looked at DMO Xian, who was still maintaining his original sitting posture. That half mask which she personally made had concealed the emotions on his face. But Yiqing Luo acutely sensed the chilliness emitting from DMO Xian's body. Was in a bad mood? Who was it who had offended this great Buddha? Yiqing Luo looked suspiciously at the few people beside DMO Xian. The few people who had been sitting next to her before she left her seat had now all obediently moved away from her, and moved to the side. On the left and right, there was at least a space of 3 seats. Only the overlord was left as he bent his knees on the soft cushion, displaying his elegance. Peach and Xiaojin, who came into contact with Yiqing Luo's puzzled gaze, spread out their hands as they shrugged their shoulders in confusion. Just as Yiqing Luo and Peach's eyes met, transmitting the message. Suddenly, the man's cold and deep voice came into her ears. Why are you still standing there? Yiqing Luo shivered in fright from this voice. Her fingers unconsciously curled up a little. Earlier when he was in front of Miao Yi, whatever overbearing aura, indolent enchanting, in front of Dmo Xian had all disappeared. She laughed dryly as she moved her feet, and returned to Dmo Xian's side to sit down. Not waiting for Dmo Xian to speak, she had already spontaneously put her head into Dmo Xian's arms. The man's aura was very cold, but his embrace was still very warm. What? Now that you know you're in the wrong, you're here to please me? The man lowered his eyes and asked with a sneer. Yiqing Luo arched her head. The man's sandalwood scent lingered around her nose. She stretched out her arms and hugged his waist. In his arms, she raised her little head and smiled like a cat who had successfully stolen food. Wrong, Fawn. I'm the one who made the overlord unhappy. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly, not knowing why, when he saw the young lady's satisfied smile. His heart had a long-lost warmth. Chapter 2782. The young lady didn't know Dmo Xian's emotions were in turmoil. Her brows were still curved as she smiled sweetly and her voice was soft as though water could be squeezed out. I wonder what I did to make the overlord angry? Dmo Xian's eyes were slightly gloomy as he stared at her quietly, as though he wanted to stare into her soul. Yiqing Luo smiled even more wantonly. Her hands were also on Dmo Xian's waist, moving up and down, constantly taking advantage of him. There was no sign of her admitting her mistake and trying to please him. Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, Dmo Xian's large palm clasped onto the little hand that was caressing his waist. His pupils were deep. In public, if you don't want to put on a show, then let go. Yiqing Luo's hand paused as the complacent expression on her face disappeared. Damn it. While Dmo Xian was poisoned by the centrifugal venom, he definitely wouldn't have that kind of reaction towards her. Touching him all over, touching all the muscles that she didn't dare to touch previously. Because if it was in the past, she simply wanted to touch Dmo Xian's firm muscles, to feel what it felt like. In the end, there were only two possibilities. It was very likely that not only did she not touch his muscles, she would also be eaten clean without any residue left. Or perhaps, on one hand, she was eaten clean and on the other hand, she was forced to touch his muscles until she was afraid to see his muscles. No matter what the outcome was, Yiqing Luo expressed that she didn't want to experience it, so she specially touched him now. And even if Dmo Xian forgot about her and left her heart. But he was after all a man. She couldn't play happily anymore. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand resentfully, but her mouth was still very thick-skinned. I am trying to please the overlord and admit my mistake. So Miss Ye's way of admitting your mistake is to sleep with me? Dmo Xian raised his brows as his voice faintly revealed a chill. Yiqing Luo inexplicably felt a little cold. Even when she was leaning against Dmo Xian's arms, that chill was constantly surging into his skin. Yiqing Luo's pupils were slightly stunned as she quickly reacted and laughed. She suppressed the lingering cold air around her, and her hands were not afraid of death, as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist once again. Moreover, it was extremely bold. She reached into his wide silver robe and wrapped her arms around his sturdy waist. Her little face was pressed against his chest. Glancing at Dmo Xian with a faint smile, she gazed at his face. Io, the only person who can make me admit my mistake and coax, is only you, the overlord. The only person I want to sleep with, is only you, the overlord. When she said this, she even deliberately used that extremely coquettish Taiwanese accent. She could be said to be an expert at acting spoiled. Dmo Xian's thin lips were slightly pursed, his gaze deep as he gazed deeply at her face. He did not say a word and his expression was indifferent. This reaction made Yiqing Luo not know what to do. Could it be that Dmo Xian wasn't jealous? Was he unhappy with the way she apologized and tried to please him? She had made her feelings very clear. What was he still upset about? Yiqing Luo expressed. A man's heart was even more difficult to fathom than a needle at the bottom of the sea. Stop crying. Lord Dizun is angry. How can I coax him? It was quite urgent. Yiqing Luo was still racking her brains, thinking of ways to coax her man. Suddenly, a man wearing a mask appeared in her eyes. The man's face was half revealed, and his elegant face was reflected in her eyes. Yi Qingluo was stunned and just wanted to open her mouth. Her lips were forcefully sealed by the man. Chapter 2783. What was going on? Wasn't he angry? Why did he suddenly kiss her? Yi Qingluo's mind was in a mess. She couldn't resist the temptation from Dmo Xian. Very quickly Yi Qingluo was thrown into disarray. Until she was released, she was lying in Dmo Xian's arms. Her ear was stuck tightly to his heart. Her heart was beating very fast. Her mind was filled with the thump-thump-thump sound. But where her ear was stuck, the heartbeat was extremely calm, without any ripples or waves. As though the kiss earlier was just a casual action, unable to stir up any waves in his heart. Yi Qingluo's thumping heart at this moment stopped beating. Her emotions disappeared very quickly. The lady's shyness also disappeared very quickly. This change naturally did not escape Dmo Xian's eyes. The brows under the mask slightly thickened. Dmo Xian's eyes sunk. His voice was still very cold. Why? Tired of this lord's kiss? The world's peerless beauty, only the overlord. How could I be tired of the overlord's kiss? Yi Qingluo's delicate body pulled a distance away from Dmo Xian. She half propped up, only her upper body, leaning into Dmo Xian's arms. 3,000 black hair pouring down. It looked extremely lazy. She raised her head for eyes and Dmo Xian level looked at each other. The overlord took the initiative to kiss me. Does it mean you have forgiven me? She raised one arm. The wide robe slid down to the wrist. Half of the skin, as white as jade, was revealed, revealing half of the skin, the fair as jade arm. Her hand circled around Dmo Xian's neck, and immediately her delicate body came closer to his arms. The distance between the two of them narrowed again. Almost, it was nose, aimed at nose. But this kind of closeness made Dmo Xian's brows creased even tighter. His eyes dimmed, although the young lady in front was close to him. But the smile on the young lady's face was obviously too fake. It was just like the mask she wore when she was in front of others. To him, it was no different to others. This kind of thinking made Dmo Xian's heart sink. Obviously, just now, she was still in his arms, soft as water. The more Dmo Xian thought, the more vexed he felt. Such emotions overflowed. It was impossible for Yi Qingluo not to feel it. But Yi Qingluo had no intention to open her mouth. She knew that when Dmo Xian kissed her, other than the man's most direct reaction, he did not have any feelings of love towards her. That was because of the centrifugal force goo in his body. But even if he knew, while she was being kissed passionately, but he didn't have the slightest reaction, she still felt rather sad. After the selection of the saintess, she must let Yi cure Dmo Xian's poison as soon as possible. You're angry. The man's deep voice floated over. His long arms suddenly reached out and wrapped around her slender waist. Yi Qingluo's half-propped-up body suddenly pounced forward. She fell into his firm embrace. The man's scorching breath hit her in the face. Since you like my kiss, why are you still angry after being kissed? He bent down and touched his nose to hers. Their lips were separated by less than a finger. But he did not kiss her. A pair of sparkling peach blossom eyes stared deeply into her eyes. Chapter 2784. Dmo Xian knew that the young lady's words were just to brush him off. The girl didn't want to tell him the reason why she was angry. He didn't pursue the matter any further. After all, he was only slightly interested in this young lady. The girl didn't want to talk about it. He was too lazy to ask any further. Dmo Xian did not ask. Yi Qingluo couldn't be bothered to say any more. The eyes of the surrounding guests all fell on the two of them. He saw the sweetness between the two of them. He had to admit it. The man was handsome, and the woman was beautiful. When they were put together, no matter what they did, it was so pleasing to the eye. Even though it was a public kiss in the eyes of the crowd, they still couldn't bear to spoil it, because it was such a beautiful scene. This was a society that only cared about appearances. He was good-looking. Most of the time, They were easily forgiven. After this episode, the Holy Maiden selection of the Miao tribe had finally begun. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao's attitude towards Miao Yi had obviously changed after the beating just now. It was not just these two elders. It was the same for the rest of the Miao tribe. After all, Yiqing Luo's attitude towards Miao Yi earlier. Although he didn't say anything, but anyone could tell that Yiqing Luo was supporting Miao Yi. Yiqing Luo's backing represented the overlord's backing. What's more, Yiqing Luo was the little hero of the West Continent, the elder sister of the current patriarch of the Three Springs sect. He was also the benefactor of many academies. Various identities all indicated that Yiqing Luo was a master who could not be offended. He wanted to please Yiqing Luo. Naturally, they had to start from the people around Yiqing Luo. Because of this, Miao Yi was not obstructed by anyone during the selection process of the Miao tribe. Including Miao Yi, there were a total of 8 women participating in the selection. The oldest was 17 years old. The youngest was 11 years old. They were all women of the Miao tribe who were extremely talented in Gu techniques. Before the Saintess selection began, Yiqing Luo specially spoke out and said a sentence. The greatest respect towards the opponent is to go all out. So there's no need to worry about Miao Yi's status. Just compete however you want. Yiqing Luo had already said this sentence. How could the other Saintess candidates dare to go easy on him? If he went easy, it would be disrespectful to Miao Yi. Disrespecting Miao Yi was equivalent to disrespecting Yiqing Luo. Disrespecting Yiqing Luo was disrespecting the overlord. This complicated relationship was involved. Who could bear the consequences? Yiqing Luo's words were beneficial to Miao Yi. Miao Yi was able to subdue the ancient Gu king, so her strength was obvious. She didn't need her opponent to go easy on her. Moreover, if Miao Yi really became the Miao tribe's holy maiden, Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's henchmen might make a big fuss about it. For example, Miao Yi could become the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. He merely relied on Yiqing Luo's help. As for the other sacred maiden candidates, they were afraid of offending Yiqing Luo and intentionally lost to Miao Yi. Even if Miao Yi relied on her own strength, no one would believe it. He would also be accused of being unjustifiable. Whereas Yiqing Luo had already made things clear before the selection. This would also indirectly block the schemes of Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's henchmen. The truth had proven that Yiqing Luo's guess was not wrong. Miao Yi's strength had far exceeded her expectations. The reason why the Miao tribe could survive to this day was because of the Miao tribe's poison. Chapter 2785. Towards Gu worms. Miao Yi, who had contracted the king of venomous worms, was naturally not unfamiliar with them. No matter if it was the first round of distinguishing Gu worms, or the second round of analyzing the Gu worm's nurturing and the method to neutralize it, or the third round of intimate contact with Gu worms, Miao Yi had done extremely well. Her performance could be described as eye-catching and breathtaking. Even the elders who were originally extremely anxious couldn't help but stood up and clapped their hands. One must know how much pressure they were under just to sit here as the judges. Everyone knew that Miao Yi had been left outside by the previous clan leader since young. Unlike Miao Rongrong, who was the future sacred maiden whom the previous clan leader had meticulously nurtured. Plus Miao Rongrong's enmity towards Miao Yi. Miao Yi had been in Miao Miao for the past 10 over years, so she had no way to come into contact with anything related to Gu worms. Later on, Miao Yi left Miao Miao tribe. Now Miao Yi had just returned to Miao Miao tribe for a month. Even though Miao Yi had been trying her best to absorb the knowledge related to Gu worms in this 1 month. But it was impossible for her to pass the sacred maiden selection safely in a short period of 1 month. The elders judging were afraid that Miao Yi would not be able to pass the test. Coupled with Yiqing Luo's early warning, the other candidates didn't dare to go easy on Miao Yi, causing Miao Yi to fail and leave the competition, thus offending Yiqing Luo. Their hearts had always been restless. Until Miao Yi's breathtaking performance. They finally put their hearts at ease. Miao Yi's performance. The other candidates didn't need to go easy at all. Miao Yi was able to pass the test easily and safely. While they were stunned, They were also curious. What method did Miao Yi use to be able to understand everything related to goo worms clearly in 1 month's time? After 3 rounds of selection, 8 candidates, there were only 3 left. Miao Yi's performance was without a doubt the best. By this time, the sky had already turned dark. The elder judging looked at the pitch-black sky and was about to say something. Suddenly, a female attendant walked up with a letter and passed it to the elder judging. After the elder judging saw the contents of the letter, his expression changed slightly as his gaze subconsciously shot towards the Miao tribe main building's long corridor. But there wasn't a single figure there. The judging elder shifted his gaze to Miao Yi. After hesitating for a moment, under everyone's gaze, he said word by word, "The last stage of the Saintess selection is tonight. Tomorrow you will have to raise a goo insect." He paused for a moment before continuing. According to the quality of the goo worms raised, the candidates who can enter the Saintess realm and accept the ancient goo worms examination will be determined. When the judging elder announced the rules of the 4th round, everyone burst into an uproar. Especially the people of the Miao tribe. They were all stunned. Everyone knew a good quality goo worm needed time to nurture. Tonight or tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Which meant that from now until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, in such a short period of time he managed to raise a good quality goo worm. Was this a joke? After reading the rules of the last round, the judging elder's expression was a little strange. The judging elder nudged him. Since when was there a rule for the 4th round? That judging elder's face was pale as he shook his head at him. Shortly after, he passed the letter in his hand over. After the curious judging elder saw the handwriting on the letter, he revealed the same expression as him. The Miao tribe members looked at each other. Chapter 2786. The remaining 2 Saintess candidates had been raised as future Saintesses since they were young. Since birth, they had been immersed in goo worms and goo skills. Even they had no way to nurture a goo worm of good quality in just a few hours. Looking at the past sacred maiden selections, Miao tribe had never had such a weird rule. Why was it only this time? But there was an additional difficult round. The 2 sacred maiden candidates looked at each other in dismay. The expressions on their faces were dark and extremely ugly. Miao tribe's women all wanted to become the sacred maiden. They naturally wanted it too. Although Miao Yi was the direct descendant of Miao tribe leader, and she had Yi Qingluo and the overlord behind her. But didn't Yi Qingluo say it earlier? Everything depended on ability. In their hearts, there was still a little bit of hope. As long as they used their own ability to surpass Miao Yi and become the Miao tribe's sacred maiden. Even if Yi Qingluo was finding trouble for Miao Yi, she would definitely be drowned by the rumors and slanders. Not only would she throw away her own face, the overlord's reputation would also be tarnished. After all, there were so many guests present and they were all witnesses. But all the luck, after the judging elder announced the additional rounds rule, was completely shattered. Just at this moment, at the guest seating area, a rough man's voice was heard from the back. "I told you there's something wrong with this Miao Yi." Looks like the judging elder also saw that there's something wrong with Miao Yi, so he set up this 4th round of selection. "Brother Yang is right," someone echoed, and his voice was loud and clear, as though he couldn't wait for everyone in the public square to hear his words. Who in the entire Miao tribe doesn't know Miao Yi's ability? She had never come into contact with any goo skills or goo worms, so how could she possibly answer those questions? The 2nd round's goo worm rearing method and antidote method. Even us Miao clansmen don't know about it. She is someone who had never come into contact with goo worms, but not only did she answer it, she answered it so professionally, as though she had reared those goo worms and antidote those goo worms. From what I see, some people, in order to let Miao Yi become the sacred maiden, got all the sacred maiden selection questions, and made Miao Yi memorize them all. After this sentence was uttered, a storm was set off in the entire square. The more the Miao tribesmen thought about it, the more they felt that this person's words made sense. Everyone knew that Miao Yi's situation in the Miao tribe was at most a little better than a goose slave. Miao Rongrong didn't want to give Miao Yi any chance to come into contact with the goo worms. So Miao Yi's performance in the Saintess selection was stunning. The reason was, he knew the topic of the Saintess selection in advance. That made sense. That person who got the question. Everyone instinctively shifted their gazes onto Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian once again. Apart from these two people, they couldn't think of anyone else who could get the Miao tribe's Holy Maiden selection. It seemed like what these people had said was true. The judging elders found out that Miao Yi had cheated. But due to the presence of Yiqing Luo and the Overlord, they didn't dare to expose him on the spot. So they stayed at the fourth round to maintain the Miao tribe's fairness. If that was the case, everything would make sense. Chapter 2787. On the stage, the faces of the two Saintess candidates who stood side by side with Miao Yi immediately darkened after hearing the crowd's discussion. They looked at each other, then at Miao Yi. On the young and beautiful face, her eyebrows were tightly furrowed. It was obvious that she was unhappy. So the judges added an extra round of selection because you cheated. Miao Zhilian, a candidate who was about 14 years old, gritted her teeth in anger. The Saintess Miao Xuedan, who was about 17 years old and looked rather mature, pulled Miao Zhilian's sleeve, signaling her to stop talking. Miao Zhilian was still angry, but she knew that she could not vent her anger on Miao Yi. He and Miao Xuedan stood to the side. He distanced himself from Miao Yi. Miao Yi stood there alone. Her slender figure was very frail. She did not move. She didn't move at all when the guests were talking and pointing at her. Even the expression on his face did not change much. Below the selection stage, Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly, even though Miao Yi hid it well. But Yiqing Luo could still see the fluster in the depths of her eyes. After all, Miao Yi had never encountered such a thing before. No matter how early he matured, be sensible at a young age. She was only a little girl less than 15 years old, facing everyone's suspicions and distrust. No matter how she tried to explain, it would seem so weak and powerless. No one would believe it. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past the few rows at the back, where they were still leading the rhythm, discussing incessantly. Those are Miao Rongrong's henchmen. Peach explained, Miao Rongrong has fallen from power, and Miao Yixiong has been stripped of his position as clan leader. If Yi takes over, they will be the first to be eradicated. Yiqing Luo nodded in understanding. The Miao tribe did not allow their tribesmen to leave the tribe without permission. If these people escaped from the Miao tribe, they would also be hunted down by the Miao tribe. Therefore, Miao Rongrong's henchmen wanted to survive. He could only think of ways to stop Miao Yi from becoming the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. As long as Miao Yi fell, they would then bring out a new Miao tribe leader or saintess. They still had a chance to survive. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as a chilly glint flashed past her eyes. She had yet to speak. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were the first to find trouble, because Miao Rongrong's henchmen, while setting the tempo, had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo's reaction. He caught a glimpse of Yiqing Luo's gaze. His eyes were hazy, causing people to shudder. The man's rough voice rang out loud and clear. Lady Yi, am I not speaking the truth? Why are you looking at us like that? Are you trying to silence me? Someone at the side immediately followed up. Kill them to silence them? Everyone present knew that Miao Yi had cheated. Are you going to kill all of us? Miss Yi, Miao Yi's cheating has something to do with you. Our Miao tribe's holy maiden selection is such a sacred matter. But you use such a method to disturb the sanctity of my Miao tribe. What exactly are you thinking? Very quickly, Miao Rongrong's henchmen pointed all the spearheads towards Yiqing Luo. It was just a few simple sentences. He had easily provoked the anger of the Miao tribesmen. To the Miao tribe, the holy maiden of the Miao tribe was their faith. The Miao tribe's holy maiden selection was the most sacred matter. But Yiqing Luo used such a method to destroy the fairness of the holy maiden selection. Chapter 2788. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were still hooting. The Miao tribesmen's emotions were also stirred up. The scene was out of control. Even the Miao tribesmen went up to pacify them. The Miao tribesmen were waving their arms and shouting, They needed an explanation from the person who revealed the selection questions. They needed Yiqing Luo to give them an explanation. The onlookers were the guests from the other continents. It wasn't convenient for them to say anything now. Now the Miao tribesmen were extremely agitated because their beliefs had been blasphemed. If they opened their mouths, it would be easy for them to direct the fire onto themselves. The scene made Miao Rongrong's henchmen, and the rest revealed a complacent smile. Suddenly someone in the crowd started to shout, "Miao Yi, step down! Miao Yi, step down!" The deafening slogans gave the Miao tribesmen a chance to vent their frustrations. One by one they started to shout along with the slogan. The lady who was standing on the stage faced the hooting and cursing of the crowd. Her exquisite little face turned pale bit by bit. Her petite figure was trembling slightly. A pair of lively eyes stared blankly at the tribesmen below. Everyone's hooting and cursing were reflected in her pupils. No matter how strong she was, no matter how mentally prepared she was. But when she saw the scene, it made Miao Yi's strong heart start to show signs of collapse. She had obviously relied on her own hard work to get to where she was now. Why was it that no one was willing to believe her? The lady's slender figure started to bend down under the pressure. She wanted to curl up. She wanted to hug herself and stay away from all the doubts. Miao Yi's performance didn't make the Miao tribesmen feel any sympathy. On the contrary, the hooting became louder and louder. "Hey, you said I gave the Sacred Maiden selection questions to Yi to cheat. Do you have any evidence?" Just at this moment, a cold voice leisurely suppressed all the cursing and hooting. Following that, they saw the red-robed young lady who was sitting in the first row lazily supporting herself on the man's shoulder as she stood up. His red robe cascaded down like a raging fire in high spirits. The young lady's gorgeous face had a trace of indifference and laziness. It was just such a lazy posture. But for some reason, it made the pressure in the air to become extremely heavy. Miao Rongrong's henchmen's smug smiles froze on their faces. The powerful pressure made it extremely difficult for them to breathe. The square instantly fell silent. Only the girl's lazy laughter could be heard. It was like a feather that swept through everyone's hearts. "You brought this matter to my ears. If there is no evidence, I will be very angry." The girl's voice carried a hint of a smile, as well as the unique sweetness of this girl. After all, what I hate the most is being the scapegoat. Miao Rongrong's henchmen felt a chill run down their spines, and their bodies trembled. After a long time he finally found his voice again, and with a choking voice he forced himself to mutter, "Titus, what other evidence is there even a need for? This is something that the entire Miao tribe knows about. Apart from you, who else could possibly have the means to help Miao Yi cheat? With just a mouth. Can I say that? You are also cooperating with that young lady to cheat in the Sacred Maiden selection?" Yiqing Luo smiled as she pointed at Miao Zhilian, smiling contentedly. Chapter 2789. Venomous Slander. Yiqing Luo smiled calmly. "I'm very curious. Those people who looked to be in their 30s or 40s had personally said that there were several types of goo poison in the second round of the Sacred Maiden selection. Even they didn't know the method to nurture and cure it. So how did a 14-year-old young lady like you manage to answer it?" Yiqing Luo pointed at those people who were Miao Rongrong's henchmen as her eyes curved into a smile. "So I also suspect if you had colluded with those people to get hold of the Sacred Maiden selection questions in advance, and then made those people intentionally shift the suspicion of cheating onto Yi, to confuse the public." Yiqing Luo's words were spoken word by word. Her tone was very certain. Yiqing Luo's aura was originally strong. He acted as if he was serious, and the words he said made people believe him. Miao Zhilian's face instantly turned red as her eyes turned red. "You're spouting nonsense. I've been familiar with the art of goo since young, so naturally I'm clear about it. I'm different from Miao Yi, that trash who was born without a father to teach her." Miao Zhilian was still young. She had been nurtured as a Sacred Maiden candidate since young. Naturally she was proud and arrogant. How could she tolerate Yiqing Luo's slander? She was so infuriated that she lost all rationality as she started to ramble. "Miao Yi cheated and you want to drag me down with you? What evidence do you have to say that I cheated? On what basis do you say that I cheated?" Just based on the fact that you have the overlord? Without the overlord, who do you think you are? Miao Zhilian's words made Miao Shuedan, who was standing by the side, flung her hand away, as she shrunk to one side. Yi Qingluo was obviously protecting Miao Yi. Yi Qingluo was obviously going against Miao Zhilian. If she helped Miao Zhilian, she might get into trouble. The moment she was abandoned by Miao Shuedan, Miao Zhilian regained some rationality. She recalled what she had said earlier. Her face turned pale instantly. Subconsciously, she looked towards the direction of her parents. But her own family had all averted their gazes. Apparently, they had decided to give up on her. Miao Zhilian's heart seemed to be pressed down by something fiercely, making her unable to breathe. Moreover, Yi Qingluo didn't give her a chance to breathe. What evidence? Since they don't think it's necessary, then there's no need for it. Yi Qingluo smiled as she tilted her head, as she looked towards the direction of Miao Rongrong's henchmen. After all, don't you Miao people believe that as long as you open your mouth, everything is the truth? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Immediately, the clamoring clansmen calmed down. They looked at Miao Zhilian, then at Miao Yi. Following that, he turned his head back and took a look at Miao Rongrong's henchmen, and looked at Yi Qingluo. For a moment, he didn't know who to trust. Yi Qingluo's smile was very faint, without any fluctuation of emotions. But, other than your Miao tribe's simple-minded folkways, there's another point which is worth me to ponder over. She raised her eyebrows. Her eyes were like torches as she stared at the selection platform, at the two elders who had ugly expressions on their faces. She enunciated each word clearly. You Miao tribesmen don't trust your own elders, so why go through so much trouble to organize the sacred maiden selection ceremony? The faces of the Miao tribesmen darkened. The judging elder could no longer sit still. He stood up and was about to speak. Chapter 2790. She raised her slender brows, and with her gorgeous looks, her smile was beautiful but cold. The sacred maiden selection is to your Miao tribe. They should be clearer than you on how sacred it is. Yi Qingluo's interrogative words came one after another. All the Miao tribe's tribesmen turned silent. These Miao tribe's tribesmen were unable to leave the Miao tribe's territory because of the tribe rules. As a person, they were naturally more innocent. Just a few words, and she was able to influence their thoughts. Miao Rongrong's henchmen could do it. So could she. Looking at Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others' ashen expressions, Yi Qingluo's smile deepened. The few Miao tribe's elders' faces turned green and white. Yi Qingluo's words made their faces turn red. They wanted to refute. But Yi Qingluo's words were the truth. Only, when Yi Qingluo said it in front of so many guests, she exposed the internal discord in the Miao tribe, easily provoking the trust. They felt embarrassed and annoyed. The Miao tribe's elders all knew that those who started the rhythm were Miao Rongrong's henchmen. They also knew why those who started the rhythm would intentionally disrupt the sacred maiden selection. But they had to admit, after those people raised Miao Yi's doubts, even they themselves started to doubt whether Miao Yi had cheated or not. This kind of thinking, after Yi Qingluo brought it out in the open, it made them feel ashamed. You're just pestering endlessly. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others were unreconciled as they gritted their teeth. We have nothing to do with Miao Zhilian. Yi Qingluo, the more you confuse the public, the more I suspect that trash Miao Yi to pass the first 3 rounds of the sacred maiden selection. Yi Qingluo laughed lightly. Whether she has anything to do with it or not, it's not for you to say, but me. The smile on her brows was enchanting, but it revealed an obvious chill. If I show the evidence that Yi didn't cheat, then can you show the evidence that Miao Zhilian didn't cheat? Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others were stunned as their faces revealed a suspicious expression. Evidence? What evidence could they show? They hesitated. Yi Qingluo became overbearing. Why? Don't dare? Are you afraid that the matter of you slandering the Holy Maiden candidate will be exposed and punished by the Holy Maiden? Or are you afraid that the matter of you secretly colluding with Miao Zhilian will be proven? Yi Qingluo's voice was very leisurely, with a slight smile. Clear and sweet like a silver bell, pearls and jade falling on a plate. No matter how one listened to it, it was extremely comforting. However, everyone felt that the ruthlessness in that voice seemed to be able to drag them into an icehouse with a wave of his hand. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were so frightened by the invisible chill that they forgot to retort. And this hesitation. This made the Miao clansmen as well as the guests to confirm the truth of Yi Qingluo's words. Miao Zhilian was so angry that she burst into tears on the spot. Nonsense. I didn't cheat. I did not collude with those people. I don't even know that group of people. Miao Zhilian's exasperation was a stark contrast to Miao Yi's calm and elegant demeanor. The elders of the Miao tribe could not help but think. From the very beginning, when Miao Yi was condemned and questioned by everyone, Miao Yi had never opened her mouth to defend herself even once. She stood there with a calm expression. Her back was straight. Her gaze was extremely determined. Chapter 2791. The two judging elders looked at each other and nodded their heads. Following that, they looked towards Yi Qingluo's direction at the same time. One of the judging elders stood up. Since there are tribesmen who question the Sacred Maiden selection's fairness, then, in order to ensure the Sacred Maiden selection's fairness and holiness, I am willing to accept Miss Ye's suggestion. The other judging elder also stood up. I wonder what evidence does Miss Yi have to prove that eldest young Miss Miao did not cheat? If Yi's innocence is proven, how do you intend to deal with that bunch of people? Yi Qingluo gave a meaningful smile as she shot a glance at Miao Rongrong's henchman, and asked with a light smile. The judging elder was an astute person as he immediately slapped the table. The Sacred Maiden candidates are protected by the ancient Gu King of the Miao tribe. If eldest young Miss Miao's innocence is proven, those people are scheming to slander the Sacred Maiden candidates, disrespecting the Sacred Maiden and the Miao tribe. I will definitely punish them severely. Punish? Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes. The severe punishment that elder mentioned, to what extent will it be? The judging elder didn't expect Yi Qingluo to ask this question as he muttered to himself for a moment. What does Miss Yi think should be done? They are slandering Yi. If it is proven that Yi is innocent and did not cheat, then these people should be handed over to Yi to deal with. The rest of the Miao tribe are not allowed to interfere. Yi Qingluo spoke with a matter-of-fact look. These words sounded reasonable. But if one listened carefully, it was indeed overbearing and unreasonable. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest, even if Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong had fallen, they were after all the Miao tribe's tribesmen. According to Yi Qingluo's suggestion, they should be handed over to a young lass like Miao Yi to deal with. This was truly a challenge to their authority as elders. But the current situation, no matter how uncomfortable the judging elder was, he had to nod his head in agreement. Actually, the way to prove it is very simple. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly as her eyes shone with a crafty glint. Don't you feel that? Yi was able to answer all the questions in the Sacred Maiden selection because she cheated? Why not we let you set the questions randomly? As long as it is related to witchcraft, you can ask. As she spoke, she glanced at the three candidates on the stage. Her slender fingers traced them and pointed at them one by one. Do you dare to accept it? The young girl's voice was very soft, but each and every word was like a heavy stone, heavily pounding on everyone's hearts. Miao Zhilian was so frightened that she stopped crying. Miao Xuedan's face turned slightly pale. She clenched her sleeves tightly, not daring to answer. Miao Yi's beautiful eyes, which had been emotionless all this time, finally showed some ripples. Miao Yi raised her eyes and met with Yi Qingluo's resolute smiling eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered. For no reason, her heart seemed to be covered by a warm current. Miao Yi closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she raised her red lips and spat out one word with determination. I dare. The judging elder was startled. He furrowed his white eyebrows and reminded her. Miss, you have to think this through. If you can't answer or answer the questions wrongly, you will really never be able to wash away the suspicion of cheating. I've thought it through. Miao Yi didn't hesitate at all as her tone was filled with determination. If I can't answer, I'm willing to accept punishment. Miao Yi's words ended. Chapter 2792. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest looked at each other in dismay. They were feeling apprehensive and didn't give a reply for a long time. Yiqing Luo didn't have much patience as she urged them impolitely. Why? You don't dare to come up with the questions personally? Those few people clenched their teeth as they clenched their fists. All right. Not only us. Anyone present who has doubts can come up with the questions. As long as she can answer it, we believe that she didn't cheat. They didn't believe it. This trash Miao Yi could really answer all the knowledge related to venomous spells. They couldn't ask Miao Yi. And the other Miao clansmen. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her narrow eyes curved as she smiled at Miao Yi. Miao Yi nodded her head calmly, sure. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened as she immediately shifted her gaze back onto those people. Between her brows, she was still smiling. But the feeling she gave off was totally different from when she faced Miao Yi earlier. Miao Rongrong's henchmen, and the rest only felt that when that pair of smiling eyes fell onto them, it was as though they were covered with a thick layer of frost. Since you've agreed to this method to prove your innocence, then that also means that you've agreed to the suggestion of severe punishment that I mentioned earlier. Yiqing Luo's lazy voice spoke softly. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others' expressions congealed as their expressions turned ugly. They wanted to reject. But on second thoughts, Miao Yi had to accept all the questions from the Miao clansmen who had doubts about her. Under such huge pressure, even if the current sacred maiden stood out, she didn't dare to pat her chest and guarantee that she could answer all the questions 100%. It was even more impossible for Miao Yi. Thinking in this way, the man with the rough voice sneered. Yes, we agree. Yiqing Luo smiled satisfactorily. Everyone present, please help to be a witness. As for me, I'll say the ugly words first. If Yi's innocence is proven and you go back on your words, then don't blame me for killing your Miao clansmen. The last 3 words. Yiqing Luo's bite was extremely heavy. There was a hint of coldness in his tone. The group of people trembled. The arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, and they had no choice but to release it. They stiffened their necks and forcefully endured. Yiqing Luo looked at the other 2 candidates on the stage. You guys don't dare to accept the challenge? Why should I agree? I didn't cheat. Miao Zhilian's eyes were still red, and she was sobbing as she spoke. Yi didn't cheat, so I used this method to prove my innocence. Yiqing Luo said slowly. So if you didn't cheat, why are you panicking? Miao Zhilian shrank back, as she had a natural fear towards Yiqing Luo. I accept the challenge. Miao Xuedan, who had been standing in the corner, suddenly walked out. Her beautiful face was filled with elegance. Miao Zhilian's words were stuck in her throat. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she smiled and nodded her head. Miao Xuedan was quite smart. Miao Zhilian was filled with grievances and fear. In this uneasy mood, he had no choice but to agree to prove his innocence with Miao Yi and the others. After all, Miao Xuedan had accepted the challenge. If she continued to reject it, then she would be bearing the name of cheating. Even if she had 100 mouths, she probably wouldn't be able to explain it clearly. Chapter 2793. You. Yiqing Luo pointed at Miao Xuedan. Express to Yi that you suspect her apologies. You. Yiqing Luo's finger moved and pointed at Miao Zhilian. Run 3 rounds around the Miao tribe and shout, I'm a waste at the same time. Based on what? Miao Zhilian's eyes turned red as she howled angrily. Yiqing Luo's smile turned chilly as her eyes shot out a chilly glint. Miss Miao Zhilian, didn't you keep saying that Yi is a waste? Are you afraid that your answer rate is lower than Yi? Miao Zhilian's face flushed red as the anger in her chest surged. Who's afraid? Good. As long as her answer rate is higher than mine, then I'll run those 3 rounds. She gritted her teeth as her gaze turned sinister as she stared at Miao Yi. If Miao Yi loses, then the one who runs 3 rounds and shouts I'm a waste will be her. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at Miao Yi. Miao Yi didn't hesitate as she spat out a word. All right. The few Miao tribe elders looked at Yiqing Luo's extremely confident look. Looking at the stage, Miao Yi's calm expression, their hearts couldn't help but started to beat faster. Were they really so confident that they could answer the questions raised by the tribesmen? That bunch of people were all Miao Rongrong's henchmen. Now that the situation was so tense, they would absolutely not give Miao Yi a chance to make a comeback. The questions raised were definitely tricky and sharp. There was a possibility that even if it was them, they might not be able to answer it. How could these two young ladies display such calmness and confidence? It wasn't only the few elders who were curious. The guests who were crowding around were also filled with curiosity. From the barrage of gossips, the guests mostly understood some matters regarding Miao Yi, a young lady who had never come into contact with goo worms and sorcery. Could she really answer the questions raised by the Miao tribesmen regarding the sorcery? The judging elder looked at Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi and once again confirmed that the both of them weren't pretending to be calm. He cleared his throat and was about to speak. Suddenly, another female attendant walked up and handed over a piece of paper. The judging elder's expression changed as he swept his gaze around, but didn't see that familiar figure. Since he was at the scene, why did he have to keep hiding? The judging elder criticized in his mind as he followed the requirements on the letter and loudly said, "Due to time constraints, we can only give the people of our tribe a chance to ask 10 questions. Only 10 questions? Miao Rongrong's henchmen were immediately displeased. How is 10 questions enough? There are so many voodoo spells, and there are also other people who want to ask questions. Miao Yang, this is to prove that Miss Miao didn't cheat. That's why there's a Q&A session. It's not for you to test Miss Miao." The judging elder's tone darkened as he looked coldly at the leader of the group. "Miss Miao is a candidate for the Holy Maiden. You'd better watch your attitude." The man called Miao Yang was immediately silenced by the elder judge's rebuttal, and did not dare to refute. 10 questions it is. As long as Miao Yi couldn't answer a single question, Miao Yi would never be able to wash away her disdain for cheating. Both sides had no objections to this condition. The judging elder presided over this segment, and allowed them to start asking questions. After scamming those people who had nothing better to do, Yiqing Luo continued to lie lazily back into Dmo Xian's arms, calmly waiting for the outcome. Chapter 2794. I believe that everyone who works hard for their dreams will have the confidence to do their best. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up as she placed her chin on his chest. Her charming eyes were filled with brilliance. She had never been someone who was willing to be mediocre. Deep in her bones is the direct bloodline of the Miao tribe. Her smile, in between the words, softened by a few degrees. Even if Miao Rongrong does not give her any chance to touch the goo worm, she will also create an opportunity. And she paused and laughed hoarsely. She is the master that the ancient Goo King has acknowledged. How could she not be able to do such a simple thing? The big palm on her waist suddenly tightened. The man lowered his head and gently blew a breath of air into her ear. It made Yiqing Luo's petite body tremble. There was a feeling of numbness like an electric shock. The young lady's reaction, "Please Dmo Xian." The man gave a low laugh. His voice was deep and languid. "If it was you, for the thing that you are pursuing, can you do it to such an extent?" Yiqing Luo's ears turned red. Her cheeks were hot, like a fire burning. Listening to the man's low hoarse voice, exuding a hormonal aura that seduced her all the time. Beside her ear, the man's low laughter became more and more captivating. Yiqing Luo's heart almost rippled to the sky. Her 5 fingers unconsciously curled, not willing herself, so easily controlled by the man. She took a deep breath, her hands suddenly wrapped tightly around Dmo Xian's waist. Her little head smashed hard against his chest. Immediately, she raised her head and looked at his eyes seriously. Under the golden mask, those 2 shimmering peach blossom eyes were very deep, with a trace of dark and unknown complex luster. This man, no matter what temperament, that kind of peerless elegance, made one's mind ripple. Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved, word by word, clearly enunciated. "After all, I am the woman that the Overlord has taken a fancy to. If it is for you, I can do anything." Her voice was very light, and very gentle. Between her brows, there was a slight smile. The few people around couldn't help but shiver. One by one, they moved a few places away, with an unbearable expression. Have you ever considered our feelings when you're doing this? My eyes are about to be blinded. You've gone too far. Xiao Jin, Peach, and the others tried to ease the atmosphere as they joked around. However, the lovey-dovey couple remained motionless as they stared at each other. Dmo Xian's deep pupils locked onto her face without blinking. For a long time, his eyes were expressionless as he pushed her away. There wasn't even the slightest bit of joy from the girl's confession. It was as if it couldn't even cause a ripple in his heart. Very cold. The few people who were making a ruckus around them fell silent. Instantly, the atmosphere became cold and oppressive. But the Yiqing Luo who was pushed away didn't reveal any sad or unhappy expression. Instead, she calmly tidied up her messy clothes and spontaneously leaned against Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian did not move. He didn't reject her approach. Yiqing Luo didn't move as her vision fell onto Miao Yi who was on the selection stage. Soon, the Saintess selection would end. Xian would be able to return to normal. Yiqing Luo quietened down. But Dmo Xian had no way to be quiet. Chapter 2795. The girl didn't continue to tease him. He was not used to it. The girl's words just now. It hit the softest part of his heart. He couldn't control this strange emotion. The only thought in his mind was push her away. The rejection gave him a strange feeling in his heart. However, the moment he pushed the girl away, there was an extremely uncomfortable feeling in his heart. It was constantly fighting against another emotion that came out of his heart. It made him unable to control himself. What the hell was going on? Why, as long as this girl was by his side, why did he always have this strange emotion? On the selection stage, the 10 questions segment was already in full swing. Because the elders of the judging panel only gave them 10 chances to ask questions. Miao Rongrong and the others naturally wouldn't ask questions easily. Instead, they racked their brains to think of the most obscure and difficult questions about Gu. Until now, that group of people had only asked 3 questions. The 3 saintesses answered by rushing to answer. Those 3 questions were about the cultivation of many forbidden Gu, as well as the cultivation of forbidden Gu worms, and the methods to cure them. Miao Xuadan and Miao Zhilian didn't have the chance to answer. Even though they were familiar with all kinds of books about Gu worms and Gu since they were young, they couldn't answer these questions accurately. Because the Miao tribe was the most taboo. Everything about Gu. They were absolutely not allowed to touch any forbidden Gu techniques or Gu worms. Just like the forbidden place of the Miao tribe, no one dared to step into it for hundreds of years. Therefore, when Miao Rongrong's party asked questions about Gu worms and so on, the 2 of them were completely dumbfounded. They didn't know. Not to mention Miao Yi. But when the first question came out, Miao Yi's expression didn't change, and her answer was flawless. Everyone's expression changed slightly. The second question, Miao Yi still answered flawlessly. The way everyone looked at Miao Yi changed. The third question, Miao Yi answered calmly again flawlessly. At this moment, not only Miao Rongrong's party was shocked, but the elders of the judging panel were also shocked. 3 questions had been asked. There were only 7 chances left. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were already panicking. Miao Yang's face was ashen. He gritted his teeth and glared at Miao Yi, his voice trembling. No. This is impossible. How do you know so many forbidden Gu techniques and Gu worms of the Miao tribe? Where did you learn it? As he finished speaking, Miao Yang seemed to have found a breakthrough point. His eyes widened abruptly. I know. Did you secretly learn the Miao tribe's forbidden venomous spell? He became a witchcraft master? Like I said, how could a useless person like you have such a thorough understanding of the Miao tribe's Gu poison in such a short period of time? Miao Yang's words caused the expressions of the Miao clansmen to change. They all looked at Miao Yi. He tried to find some clues from Miao Yi. Once the taboo Miao Gu was involved, to the Miao tribe, that person was a Gu master. If Miao Yi became a Wu Gu master, then he would have to accept the Miao tribe's punishment of burning him to the heavens. On the selection stage, the girl who was the center of everyone's attention slowly revealed a disdainful smile on her young and pretty face. Her pair of spirited eyes slowly swept across the crowd below the stage. Finally, it landed on Miao Yang. Chapter 2796. Senior Miao Yang is slandering me for cheating, and now he's slandering me as a witchcraft master? The girl was still laughing, but in her laughter, there were other emotions mixed in. Clearly, the girl was smiling. However, as they watched, they felt a sense of heartache. They felt that the girl in front of them was just forcing herself to smile and remain calm in the face of so many doubts. The Miao tribesman's heart softened, thinking of how Miao Yang and the rest had determined that Miao Yi had cheated, and all sorts of accusations. The Miao tribesmen were filled with guilt. That's right, they had slandered Miao Yi for cheating. Now they were slandering Miao Yi for being a witchcraft master? A girl who was not even 15 was slandered for cheating in the Saintess selection. It was equivalent to ruining the girl's life. Now they were saying that the girl was a witchcraft master. Were they planning to use their anger to burn the girl as a witchcraft master and sacrifice her to heaven? It was too vicious. The Miao tribesmen were very clear how much damage these two slander could cause to a person, or even a family. Miao Yang and the rest were obviously determined to kill Miao Yi. Indeed, since young, because of my so-called sister, I did not have the chance to come into contact with Miao Gu. Miao Yi enunciated each word slowly. Have you ever thought about why she is so wary of me? Miao Yi looked at the Miao tribesman, her lips curling into a self-deprecating smile. Because Miao Rongrong is afraid of my talent towards Miao Gu, she laughed softly. Her laughter was filled with coldness. As long as I come into contact with Miao Gu, no matter what kind of Gu technique it is, I can easily remember it in my mind, and also the method to cure it. Miao Yi's words were like a sudden clap of thunder, striking the Miao clansmen until they were tender on the inside and crispy on the outside. The elders of the Miao tribe stood up in disbelief and looked at Miao Yi. Miao Gu prodigy. Miao Yi was actually a rare Miao Gu prodigy. With such a prodigy, Miao Yixiong was actually buried. Miao Yang was clearly stunned by Miao Yi's words. He roared hysterically, "Impossible! Why, you're lying. You want to mold yourself into a Miao Gu genius, so that the elders will be biased towards you, right?" Miao Yi was very calm in the face of Miao Yang's hoarse screams. She smiled and didn't respond to Miao Yang's words. The Miao clansmen and elders naturally chose to believe in Miao Yi. Miao Yi definitely did not have the guts to fake Miao Gu's innate talent in front of everyone. After all, it would only take a few days of observation to determine whether a Miao Gu was a genius or not. Poochie. A chuckle leisurely rippled over the square. It also suppressed Miao Yang's hoarse screams. Everyone turned to the source of the voice. The red-clothed girl in the first row of the guest seats giggled and said, "Aren't you going to ask a question to prove your innocence? What's the point of talking about other meaningless things?" Yi Qing Luo indifferently raised her brows as her long and narrow eyes were filled with impatience. "Miao Gongzi has been slandering Yi time and time again. Is it because you feel that? The Miao tribesmen are all fools, the elders are all fools, and the surrounding crowd are all fools? That you can incite as you wish?" Her tone was very light and gentle, without the slightest fluctuation of emotions. Miao Yang and the others' faces immediately turned black. Chapter 2797. Those who originally had suspicions towards Miao Yi didn't dare to reveal it at this moment. If they really suspected Miao Yi, wouldn't that be admitting that they were fools who could be easily incited? "Master Miao, don't waste everyone's time." Yi Qing Luo's expression seemed to be impatient. Following that, she leaned her body towards the silent man beside her. That coquettish posture, matched with that devastatingly beautiful face, it really had a sense of a femme fatale. A femme fatale. This scene was indeed beautiful, but no one dared to admire it, especially when they heard the impatience in Yi Qing Luo's tone. They felt apprehensive in their hearts. "There are still 7 more questions. Master Miao, looking at your attitude, I feel that even if you finish all 10 questions, you will not believe Yi. Is there a need to continue with these questions? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her faint gaze swept towards Miao Yang. Ask. Elder has already listed out the rules, 10 questions it is. Miao Yang wouldn't give up this chance. Only 3 questions had been answered so far. For the remaining questions, as long as Miao Yi didn't manage to answer any question or didn't answer it, then no matter if it was cheating or Miao Yi's self-bestowed title of Miao Gu Genius, it would all be crushed. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. She had seen shameless people, but never to such a shameless person. Right from the start, he was the one who was pestering endlessly. Now he actually pushed the responsibility of the questioning round to Elder Miao? Yiqing Luo laughed coldly as she raised her volume. Then continue asking. After the 10 questions are over, I believe the elders will have an idea whether our Yi is really a Miao Gu genius or not, and whether she needs to cheat to pass the Sacred Maiden selection checkpoint. Yiqing Luo spoke. Even if Miao Yang and the rest wanted to continue using other ways to slander Miao Yi, to disrupt Miao Yi's rhythm, at this moment they couldn't continue. As for the others, they wouldn't be able to incite them so easily. Another 2 questions which they racked their brains to come up with. Once again, Miao Yi had answered them flawlessly. Even those answers, Miao Yang and the rest didn't know. But looking at the shocked, satisfied, and amazed expressions on the faces of the elders, he knew that Miao Yi must have gotten it right. At this moment, it was not only Miao Yang and the others who were feeling anxious. At this moment, Miao Zhilian was trembling in fear. Because of Miao Gu's talent, Miao Zhilian had never suffered any grievances since she was young. Now, in front of everyone, her dignity was being trampled on by a piece of trash that she had always looked down on. After losing the quiz contest, Yi Xuanxi would become the laughingstock of the Miao people. No, absolutely not. She would never run 3 laps around the Miao tribe. He would never say that she was useless. Miao Zhilian gripped her sleeves tightly as she looked at Miao Yang and the others anxiously. As long as she could answer the remaining 5 questions, she might not necessarily lose. However, when Miao Zhilian's gaze fell on Miao Yang, but when he met Miao Yang's eyes, he gave him a suggestive look. Miao Zhilian's beautiful eyes widened as her body tensed up. Miao Yang's eyes flickered as he mouthed the message silently. I'll ask a simple question. Answer it immediately. Miao Zhilian's eyes trembled as she nodded her head continuously. This was the answering mode. As long as she answered first, Miao Yi would lose the right to answer the next question. Chapter 2798. But the 2 of them thought that they were infallible as they secretly exchanged glances. But it fell into Yiqing Luo's eyes completely. She squinted her eyes as she realized something, and was about to get up to stop their conspiracy. But her body had yet to move. A large palm suddenly clasped her slender waist tightly. He held her firmly in his arms. Yiqing Luo's nose was filled with the man's sandalwood scent. She frowned as she raised her head and looked at the man's smooth and beautiful chin. She pursed her thin lips, but the next moment, her lips curled as she smiled and said, Overlord, you can't bear for me to leave? Originally, Yiqing Luo thought that after she said this sentence, the pampered and arrogant Dmo Xian would definitely let go and use his deep eyes to look at her fixedly. Then he spat out a word. Ha! But Dmo Xian didn't let go. Indeed, he spat out a word. But that word wasn't ha, but n. He softly and slowly replied with an n, and didn't continue to speak. This n made Yiqing Luo's petite body suddenly trembled. Her eyes suddenly widened as she propped herself up and met his gaze. Really? He actually replied with an n? Admitted that he couldn't leave her. When did this man become so honest? Then my next question. Suddenly, Miao Yang's voice was heard from the crowd. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she immediately shook off the seduction in her mind. I'm not leaving. After settling this matter, I'll be back immediately. She struggled as both her hands held onto Dmo Xian's chest, and was about to climb up. But the next moment, her 2 hands were tightly held by Dmo Xian. Following that, the force on his waist increased in strength. Yiqing Luo almost fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Dmo Xian. Yi Qingluo's chin knocked against his chest as she frowned in pain. Stop fooling around. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes. His eyes were deep and dark. Hearing Yi Qingluo calling him by his full name. Hearing Yi Qingluo throwing a tantrum at him. His mood was inexplicably joyful. It was as if he was able to stir up more of the girl's emotions, and he felt extremely satisfied. The girl in his arms began to struggle again. Her soft little hands moved up and down his body through his robe. The softness made his lower abdomen a little tight. Dmo Xian. Yi Qingluo felt the changes on his body and her cheeks flushed red as she gritted her teeth and howled out his name once again. Even if he had forgotten her, this man was still as beastly as before. Dmo Xian lowered his head and his scorching breath sprayed onto her neck as he gave a low laugh. Isn't it said that she's not willing to be a mediocre person? So why is there a need to be like old maid, protecting her in every aspect? You helped her get out of trouble this time. Then, what about the next time, the time after that? Dmo Xian's words were extremely cold, but it was indeed reasonable. Yi Qingluo was speechless for a moment. The man's temperature was still rising. His breath was so hot that her skin felt like it was being brushed by flames. Her delicate body trembled. At the same time, Miao Yang had already asked the next question, and was even gesturing to Miao Zhilian at the same time. What's the best food to feed the goo worm? Miao Zhilian's eyes shone as she speedily stretched out her hand to snatch the handkerchief on the table. Whoever snatched the handkerchief first would be able to answer. But the moment Miao Zhilian's hand touched the handkerchief, Chapter 2799. The blood essence of the person who breeds the goo. The girl's voice was clear as it fell into everyone's ears clearly. This was the answer to this question. Miao Zhilian's outstretched hand froze in midair. Aya. The girl patted her head in annoyance as she looked at Miao Zhilian apologetically. Sorry, I've consecutively answered so many questions that I've formed a habit and thought that you guys couldn't answer. So I answered on my own. After the young lady's words were spoken, the guests couldn't help but burst out laughing. Miao Zhilian's face turned green and white. The humiliation and resentment and shame made her hate Miao Yi even more. She retracted her hand which was about to touch the handkerchief as she gritted her teeth and stared at Miao Yi. Seeing this scene, Yi Qingluo also stopped struggling as a sliver of smile appeared in her eyes. She had indeed grown up. She knew how to use the first answer method to ruin the cooperation between Miao Zhilian and Miao Yang. Even if this question was answered by Miao Yi without snatching the handkerchief, it wouldn't be scored. But, similarly, Miao Zhilian's question had also missed the opportunity. Miao Yi was considered to have lost this question's score. She was still far ahead. After all, it wasn't that she couldn't answer this question, it was just that she forgot to snatch the handkerchief. This little sister of yours is rather smart. Dmo Xian's chin was placed on Yi Qingluo's neck as his deep hoarse voice carried a bewitching magnetism. Yi Qingluo's body softened as a complacent smile hung on her face. Of course. Not struggling anymore? Dmo Xian raised his brows as he sneered. No, Overlord can't bear to part with me. Why would I struggle? Yi Qingluo giggled as she snuggled into Dmo Xian's arms. Her hands were about to wrap around Dmo Xian's waist. The man's large palm directly grabbed onto her shoulders. Following that, he exerted force. Yi Qingluo's body was lifted away from his body. Heh. Dmo Xian resumed his aloof abstinence. Yi Qingluo. Did he need to be so heartless? The overlord who admitted that he couldn't bear to part with her just now might be a lie. Dmo Xian ignored the young lady's blazing gaze as he calmly looked ahead. In the next instant, a furry little thing crashed into his arms. The girl's entire body seemed to be glued to his. She hugged his waist tightly with both hands and muttered, "You don't want to recognize me just because you put on your pants? No way." Dmo Xian. The little head in his arms was still arching incessantly. The glint in Dmo Xian's eyes softened a little. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile that even he himself didn't notice. After a while, his thin lips moved slightly. His voice was husky and sexy. Put on pants? It seems. This lord hasn't taken off my pants with you yet, right? Yiqing Luo expressed that the noble and elegant overlord need not reply to this sentence. After Miao Yi snatched to answer that simple question, she looked at the judging elder guiltily. I really didn't do it on purpose. May I ask all the elders, how should this question be counted? The judging elder was also dumbfounded by this scene. Hearing Miao Yi's question, he was stunned for a moment before he coughed and continued. This question, no one will be counted. Continue to the next question. Chapter 2800. Rules. The judging elder was obviously angered as well. He sneered. Why don't you tell me what the rules are? Miao Yang opened his mouth and wanted to refute, but when the words reached his mouth, he could not say anything. Indeed, from the start, there was no rule. This was just to prove that Miao Yi did not cheat, and added a question segment. There was no written rule that one must snatch the handkerchief to answer. There was no written rule that if one did not answer according to the rules, he would lose. Miao Yang's expression froze for a moment. In the end, he could only bitterly clench his fists and hang his head, unable to refute. The judging elder snorted. This is the Saintess selection ceremony. If you have any other thoughts, don't put them on the Saintess candidate, otherwise, even if the Saintess does not care, this elder will represent the Saintess to punish the tribesmen who sabotaged the selection. The warning of the judging elder was equivalent to the warning of the other elders. Miao Yang's expression was ugly, and did not dare to raise his head. Now, they had lost Miao Rongrong's protection. In this Miao tribe, there was no place for them to stand. If they offended the Miao elders, if the final result was death, it would be a relief for them. What they were afraid of was that it would be more painful than death. If there are no objections, continue the questioning. Don't waste the tribesmen's and guests' time. The judging elder coldly glanced at Miao Yang and the rest, his tone full of impatience. There were 4 more questioning opportunities. All 6 questions were answered by Miao Yi alone. Even if one of the questions was not scored, Miao Yi could be considered to have answered 5 questions properly. Compared to the other 2, the Saintess candidate who did not answer a single question, Miao Yi was already far ahead. He was 100% sure of Miao Yi's talent in Miao Gu. A Miao Gu genius did not need any cheating methods. The judging elder's heart was filled with Miao Yi. This Miao Gu genius, there was no other existence in his eyes. Miao Yang and the others couldn't think of a more obscure Gu technique at this moment. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Their gazes suddenly swept across the Miao tribesmen. Miao Yang clenched his fists, raising his voice. Since Miao Yi said that she is a Miao Gu genius, there is no point in answering our questions. Why don't we let the other clansmen personally witness how much of a genius you are? The Miao tribesmen immediately became silent. To be honest, they really wanted to personally verify the truth of Miao Yi's words. If Miao Yi was really a Miao Gu genius, in that case, the holy maiden of this generation would definitely be her. Could the Miao tribe be stable and continue to flourish? It all depended on whether the Saintess had chosen well enough. Therefore, if Miao Yi was truly a Miao Gu genius, they were willing to submit in body and mind. However, the Miao tribesmen did not immediately express their thoughts. Instead, they turned their gazes towards the 2 judging elders on the selection stage. Then the judging elder nodded. The Miao tribesmen finally moved. The group of people gathered together and discussed for the time it took an incense stick to burn. Finally, a representative of the tribe raised a question. This question did not point towards the direction of witchcraft. But as soon as it was brought up, even the elders of the Miao tribe might not understand, much less some of the tribe members. Not to mention Miao Xuedan and Miao Zhilian. Chapter 2801. Miao Yang saw this and was overjoyed. As expected, letting the Miao tribesmen ask the question was the right choice. He could not help but laugh loudly. Miao Yi, didn't you say you are a Miao Gu genius? Why, you can't answer the Miao tribesmen's question. Ha ha ha. If you don't have the ability, don't make empty promises. Miao Yang and the others burst into laughter. The group was laughing. The Miao tribesmen's expressions were not good. He felt even more apprehensive in his heart. The questions they posed were indeed too tricky, because even they themselves did not know what the answer was. It could be said that the question they asked was an unsolved riddle of the Miao tribe for hundreds of years. Even if Miao Yi was a Miao Gu genius, to a riddle that could not be solved for hundreds of years, Miao Yi would not be able to answer it. The tribesman's representative heard Miao Yang and the rest's unbridled laughter, and felt increasingly upset. After a long while, the Zhu people's representative decided to change the question to the judging elder. The tribesman's representative took a step forward, and was about to speak. Suddenly, the woman who had been silent all this while took a step forward. She moved. The entire place was silent. The Zhu people's representative's movements also froze. Hundreds of pairs of eyes looked at the girl. The girl slowly stretched out her hand and took the handkerchief. The judging elder stood up excitedly. Many tribesmen stared with wide eyes in disbelief. Miao Yang and the rest's laughter also stopped at this moment. Even the surrounding guests did not understand the Miao tribe's question, and could not understand what the saintess meant to the Miao tribe. She was just a passerby, and could not help but hold their breaths. Miao Yi was to answer this question? She could really answer it. Under everyone's different gazes, Miao Yi held the handkerchief, her beautiful eyes calm as she slowly said, "I have only seen this gu in ancient books. If I am wrong, I hope the elders can forgive me." The other elders could not help but tremble in excitement. The judging elder immediately shook his head. No matter, say it." "What do you mean no matter? If she's wrong, that means she cheated her way to the top," Miao Yang said angrily. The judging elder's white eyebrows furrowed as he sneered and shot a glance in the direction of the square's periphery. A group of Miao tribe guards rushed over. 2 guards, one on the left and one on the right, restrained Miao Yang. Miao Yang did not even have the time to resist before he was pinned to his seat by the guards. The dozen or so henchmen around him all sat stiffly on the soft cushions, not daring to move. "Let me go. What right do you have to capture me? Let me go." Miao Yang struggled with all his might. His facial features were twisted as he roared ferociously. The judging elder sneered. "Just based on the fact that you have repeatedly disrupted the saintess selection ceremony, this elder has the right to punish you for your offense." Miao Yang bared his teeth in anger. "I refuse to accept this. I'm just raising my suspicions as a citizen. How did I disrupt the saintess ceremony?" "Bet on his mouth." The judging elder's cold eyes swept across. The guard took out a ball of cloth from somewhere and stuffed it into Miao Yang's mouth. Suddenly, the world became quiet. Chapter 2802. The judging elder's action was giving Miao Yi enough face. It was also indirectly acknowledging Miao Yi's identity. That was acknowledging that Miao Yi was a Gu Miao genius. With the support of the judging elder, Miao Yang's group was going to suffer. On the selection platform, the girl who was the center of attention looked at the judging elder calmly. Her red lips curled into a sweet smile. Then word by word he unhurriedly said the answer to that question. Miao Yi's explanation was simple and concise. After she analyzed this gu worm that was an unsolved mystery, then she guessed several solutions to the gu worm. Finally, Miao Yi finished her explanation. The entire place was silent. The tribesmen looked at Miao Yi, their eyes filled with shock. They sucked in a cold breath in disbelief. They could not believe that Miao Yi knew this gu worm like the back of her hand. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, at the judging elder's seat, the elders clapped. The 2 judging elders rushed to Miao Yi excitedly. "Well said. What Miss Miao said was too well said. Your answer can be said to be perfect." Not only the judging elders were excited, even the other Miao tribe elders who were watching from the side could not suppress their excitement and also started to applaud. Miao Yi's answer was very detailed, and those solutions to the gu worm could be tried. She could clearly solve the gu worm that the Miao tribe had been unable to solve for hundreds of years, and she could even propose a solution. This was not something that could be answered simply by reading the records of the ancient books. Miao Yi's answer gave them the feeling that she had personally nurtured this gu worm. Miao Yi continued to smile calmly. However, if one were to look closely, One could also see the excitement and joy in her eyes gradually spreading. That was the smile of finally seeing the moon. That was the smile of finally getting recognition. That was the smile of finally being able to stand in public and talk about goo worms. That was finally all the hard work. It was really worth it. Miao Yi's heart could not stop trembling. The next question. The judging elder and the other elders did not give Miao Yang and the tribesmen a chance to ask questions. Such a rare opportunity. Of course they had to bring out all the problems that the Miao tribe had been researching for decades, even centuries, but were unable to solve. Miao Yi did not disappoint them. No matter what the question was, she answered all of them with ease. Moreover, every answer was very detailed. The few elders of the Miao tribe were almost boiling, about to explode. Write down every question. Miao Yang's face paled. At the end of the 9th question, Miao Yang was almost paralyzed in the grip of the guards, his face as ashen as a sheet. Who would have thought? Originally he wanted to stop Miao Yi from becoming the future holy maiden. Miao Yi was reduced to a cheater who was ridiculed by the Miao clansmen. But this action had completely helped Miao Yi. As a result, all the clansmen were sincerely convinced of Miao Yi's strength. Instead, it made Miao Yi's position in the Miao tribe more stable. The 10th question, the last question. The judging elder exchanged glances with the other elders excitedly. For the last question, we must come up with the most difficult one. Yes, yes. Hurry up and think about it. The elders immediately echoed. Chapter 2803. After discussing for about half a cup of tea's time, one of the judges raised his head confidently as he looked at Miao Yi with a beaming smile. Eldest young Miss Miao, the last question. You have to think carefully before you answer. This elder will start now. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a clear voice came from afar. That voice was a deep female voice which was extremely dignified. The judge's voice suddenly stopped. Following that, he swiftly raised his right hand and pressed it on his left shoulder as he bent down towards the direction of the voice. A few of the elders whose eyes were still shining immediately hid their emotions and bowed in the direction of the voice. Not only that, the Miao tribesmen were completely silent as their expressions were filled with respect. One by one, they plopped onto the ground as they knelt down. Miao Zhilian and Miao Shuedan both knelt down as well. Miao Yi was stunned as she hadn't reacted in time. The judge next to her tugged Miao Yi fiercely. Miao Yi staggered as she knelt onto the ground. At the stairs of the selection platform, two figures walked up the platform with steady footsteps. The one walking in front was a lady dressed in simple Miao tribesman attire. She was around 30 years old and looked gentle like water. But the imposing manner around her was dignified and noble. It made one look at her and immediately lowered their eyes, not daring to look at her again. Yiqing Luo also noticed it. This lady's dressing looked simple. However, every ornament on the woman's body was exquisitely carved and extremely luxurious. Behind the lady was a white-haired old man in a white robe. Yiqing Luo almost recognized the lady's identity at first glance, Sacred Lady. Miao tribesman's current Sacred Lady. As expected, all the Miao tribesmen greeted in unison. Greetings, Sacred Lady. Miaoji raised her hand. Sacred Lady selection ceremony, no need to be so courteous. Saying that, Miaoji directly found an empty seat on the selection stage and sat down. The judge elder eagerly stepped forward and said, Lady Saintess has attached great importance to this Saintess selection. There is indeed a very outstanding candidate for the Saintess selection. I'll bring her over for Sacred Lady to take a look. No need. Miaoji waved her hand and said, I saw and heard everything that happened here clearly. After she finished speaking, she lifted her eyes and looked straight at Miao Yi. Miao Yi had just stood up from the ground when she felt Miaoji's gaze on her. She looked up and met Miaoji's deep, probing eyes. She was startled, and there seemed to be some emotions surging in her eyes. But she restrained herself. She pursed her lips tightly and did not speak. After a while, Miaoji stared at Miao Yi and said lightly, There's one last question. I'll ask it. Do you have any objections? When he asked the question, he felt a chill run down his spine. The elders were all stunned. Miao Ji was the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. His authority was above the Miao tribe leader. If she had a request, the Miao people must obey unconditionally. However, Miao Ji had actually asked for a candidate's opinion. And he even called himself me. What was the relationship between Miao Ji and this candidate? The clansmen were full of questions. However, the two people who were being guessed only stared at each other and did not speak for a long time. Miao Yi did not speak. Miao Ji didn't rush him. Until after a long time later, everyone felt that their breaths were suffocating. Chapter 2804. Miao Ji's expression was cold and calm. Suddenly, her red lips curved. That faint smile hid a deeper meaning that no one could understand. She opened her red lips and asked, "My question is, how to successfully contract the ancient Gu king?" This question caused an uproar in the surroundings. The sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air could be heard one after another. Contract the ancient Gu king? The ancient Gu king was the treasure of the Miao tribe. The holy maiden of the Miao tribe was chosen by the ancient Gu king. It could be said that even if she passed the selection and made it to the end, if she could not get the approval of the ancient Gu king, the holy maiden candidate would be disqualified. The holy maiden said, "Contract the ancient Gu king?" Did the holy maiden want to contract the ancient Gu king? How could the treasure of the Miao tribe be easily contracted by a Gu master? Even if she was the holy maiden approved by the ancient Gu king, she could not contract the ancient Gu king. This question caused a lot of discussion among the crowd. Miao Yang, who was being held by the Miao tribe guards, had a crazy smile on his face. His mouth was gagged, so he could only let out muffled laughter. It sounded extremely strange. Ha ha ha, she was indeed the holy maiden. Just one question, and Miao Yi was defeated. So what if Miao Yi was the genius of the Miao tribe? Looking at the entire Miao tribe, who had the ability and who dared to think of contracting the ancient Gu king? How could Miao Yi answer? It seemed that the holy maiden did not like Miao Yi. But it was true. Which woman would like a woman who was better than her? Miao Yi's existence had greatly affected the holy maiden's status. Miao Yang was full of joy and could not wait to see Miao Yi's defeat. As expected, when the girl on the selection stage heard Miao Ji's question, her face instantly turned pale. Miao Yi's heart trembled violently. She looked at Miao Ji in shock. What was the real meaning of Miao Ji's question? It was just a simple question. Or, did she know that she had signed a contract with the ancient Gu king, so she came to test her? However, no matter how Miao Yi looked at Miao Ji's expression was very calm, giving off a sense of distance that prevented strangers from approaching. After all, Miao Yi's cultivation was still too shallow. She really could not understand Miao Ji's meaning. She tried hard to calm her mind and calm her tone and breathing. What is the meaning of the holy maiden's question? Just answer me. Miao Ji's smile was still as noble and distant as ever. Miao Yi pursed her pink lips and stared at her for several breaths of time. Then she snorted and sneered. The sneer was very light, but Miao Ji heard it clearly. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly, but she soon regained her composure. The girl's indifferent voice had already reached his ears. As everyone knows, the ancient king of venomous worms is the treasure of the Miao tribe. No one in the world can tame the ancient king of venomous worms. Saintess asked me this question. Could it be that you have some inappropriate thoughts about the ancient Gu king? Miao Yi. The judging elder standing beside Miao Ji had never imagined that Miao Yi would say something so audacious. Was he provoking the saintess? Was she tired of living? The judges were so scared that cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Chapter 2805. Miao Ji raised her hand. The judging elder's words were stuck in his throat as he didn't dare to continue. Miao Ji's emotions were indifferent, and no one could tell what she was feeling. Her brows were very calm. What she means, I am very clear. The judging elder shuddered. Did Sacred Maiden develop a feeling of disgust towards Miao Yi? He opened his mouth, wanting to plead for Miao Yi. But when he met Miao Ji's deep and tranquil beautiful eyes, he couldn't say anything. Not only the judging elder was panicking, the other elders were also panicking. Miao tribe finally had such a talented Gu master. Without any special training, she was already so powerful to such an extent. If she was properly trained in time, Miao Yi would definitely become the #1 Gu master in Miao tribe, an existence that surpassed countless elders and even Sacred Maiden. But the current Miao Yi was just relying on her Miao tribe leader's direct bloodline. If Sacred Maiden wanted Miao Yi's life, it was simply a piece of cake. They couldn't bear to lose such a Miao Gu genius. But they didn't dare to offend Sacred Maiden. Just as the elders were feeling apprehensive, deliberating over their words, and wanted to plead for Miao Yi. Not only did Miao Yi not show any signs of fear, she revealed a totally different arrogance as she sneered and continued to provoke. Then Sacred Maiden, what do you think I mean? Miao Yi. The judging elder was so angry that he gritted his teeth, showing a look of exasperation. Shut up. Do you know who the person in front of you is? Miao Yi scoffed. The coldness in her eyes spread throughout her entire body. She stared at Miao Ji, whose beautiful eyes were calm from the start, as the waves in her eyes surged wantonly. Miao Yi's expression was seen clearly by Yi Qing Luo, who was seated. She squinted her eyes and raised her brows. Yi and Sacred Maiden are old acquaintances? Furthermore, there are grudges. A man's deep voice floated from above. Getting the man's response, Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved as she immediately raised her head. Her eyes were almost glued to Dmo Xian's revealed lower jaw. Fair skin, smooth lines. His rosy lips seemed to be seducing her. In front of the beauty, Yi Qing Luo's eyes were dyed with a gorgeous color. Dear Overlord, do you know about their feud? So what if I know? So what if I don't? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and looked at the young lady in his arms, who was giggling like a cat that had stolen a fish. His gaze unconsciously turned gentle. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes curved even more. If you know, can I bribe my dear Overlord a little to secretly tell me some inside information? What bribe? Dmo Xian's eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Yi Qing Luo raised her slender fingers and tapped on her pink lips. A kiss from a beauty. Do you accept this bribe? Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips curled up into a faint smile. Are you trying to bribe me, or are you trying to kiss me in the name of bribing me? Both. Yi Qing Luo smiled like a flower as she hooked one arm around Dmo Xian's neck. So, what do you think of Overlord? The girl's exquisite face was reflected in front of him. Dmo Xian felt his throat tightening as he controlled the urge to lower his head and kiss her. After that, he squinted his eyes in a sultry manner, not saying a word. Yi Qing Luo understood what he meant. She slowly propped herself up and planted her pink lips on his. Chapter 2806. Yi Qing Luo pulled the distance between the two of them and raised her blushing face. Bribing is done, my dear Overlord. Isn't it time to reveal some gossip? Dmo Xian's brows, which were hidden under the mask, rose as his thin lips curled up, and his voice was indifferent. What gossip? I don't know. You. Yi Qing Luo was furious. He didn't know? He didn't know. Put on an unfathomable look and still accepted her kiss? This was a fake kiss, right? Damn it. Had she been tricked by Dmo Xian? Yi Qing Luo expressed that the current Dmo Xian's tricks were too deep and she couldn't win him. Yi Qing Luo gritted her teeth, whereas Dmo Xian was languid and satisfied. Yi Qing Luo's gaze shifted to the man's peerless face. Between her lips, there was still the man's elegant sandalwood scent. Decisively, Yi Qing Luo kept away the unhappiness of being tricked and raised her eyes as her pink lips curled into an alluring arc as her little body leaned into Dmo Xian's arms. Don't know then don't know. Anyway, it's not a loss to bribe the Overlord for a kiss. On the selection stage, Miao Yi and Miao Ji were still quietly looking at each other, facing Miao Yi's repeated provocations. Miao Ji didn't show any signs of anger. Miao Ji's expression was emotionless as her beautiful eyes looked at her face and her tone was indifferent. You think that I want to contract the ancient Gu King, right? Sacred Maiden's words made the elders' faces turn pale. Some of them who were holding things in their hands dropped onto the ground. What was the relationship between Sacred Maiden and this Sacred Maiden candidate? Why did they feel that? The atmosphere between them was so strange. In the face of the Saintess candidate's repeated provocations and obvious hostility, Sacred Maiden didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, that pair of calm, beautiful eyes revealed a trace of helplessness. Helplessness? Did they see wrongly? The Saintess actually felt helpless? The elders were shocked, but the two people who were being watched did not care about it. Miao Yi's eyes dimmed slightly, as though there were some raging waves rolling in her eyes. She stared at Miao Ji, pursed her lips and suddenly said, "You were the one who suggested the last hurdle, the hurdle of nurturing the goo worm from tonight to tomorrow, right?" Miao Ji didn't say anything. Miao Yi clenched her fists and continued to ask, "Just now, the questions they asked me and the 10 questions were also your idea, right?" Miao Ji raised her eyebrows. Her lips curled into a smile as she said, "You're quite observant." This was also a tacit agreement. Miao Yi's fingers curled into a fist. The emotion in his eyes surged even more violently. It was as if in the next instant, it would surge out and destroy everything. Yes, she was indeed observant. It was as if he had noticed the interaction between Miao Zhilian and Miao Yang. She quickly came up with a countermeasure. Just like, after passing the first 3 rounds of the Saintess selection, she had seen all the letters that the waitress had handed to the judges. Then, during the Q&A session, the condition of proving his innocence was stated. Another maid handed him a letter. Miao Yi had never seen the holy maiden of the Miao tribe in her 10 years in the Miao tribe. But after all, she had grown up in the Miao tribe leader's family. Naturally, she knew that the only person who could order the elders around was the Sacred Maiden. The judges arranged the following hurdles and rules, according to what was written on the letter. Chapter 2807. In the beginning, Miao Yi did not understand why the Saintess, who had never cared about worldly affairs, would intervene in the selection of the Saintess. Moreover, he had proposed such a difficult hurdle. After seeing Miao Ji, she finally understood. Because she, Miao Yi, was this year's Holy Maiden candidate. So Miao Ji came. The corners of Miao Yi's mouth twitched as a self-deprecating smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. "Just say it. What do you want? Are you trying to force me to withdraw from the Saintess selection? Or are you trying to force me to leave the Miao tribe?" As she spoke, a trace of loneliness flashed across her eyes. She lowered her head and gave an almost inaudible self-deprecating laugh. "I'm Miao Yi, what virtue and ability do I have to actually make you, the Miao tribe's Saintess, personally come forward to deal with me?" Miao Ji's hands tightened on the table. "It's getting late. Don't waste other people's time. What exactly do you want? Just say it." Miao Yi's gaze landed on Miao Ji's tightly curled up hand. But soon it disappeared. Miao Ji remained silent for a long time. Miao Yi's frown deepened. The surrounding elders didn't dare to open their mouths to break the awkward atmosphere. Everyone could hear it. There must be a special relationship between Miao Ji and Miao Yi. There was complete silence on the selection platform. After a long time, impatience appeared on Miao Yi's face. She knitted her brows tightly, turned around, and walked down the stage. As he walked, he cast his gaze towards Yiqing Luo. From Miao Yi's eyes, Yiqing Luo read her apologies. He seemed to be saying to her, "I'm sorry to disappoint you." Did Miao Yi choose to give up the chance to become the Holy Maiden? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Miao Yi's slightly pale complexion, and then looked at Miao Ji, who had a forbearing expression. If Miao Yi gave up the venomous worm in DM Ocean's body, what to do? However, looking at the atmosphere between Miao Yi and Miao Ji, if she really forced Miao Yi to continue participating in the later stages of the selection, to Miao Yi it was too cruel. What should she do? Perhaps it was because of Yiqing Luo's inner fear. DM Ocean sensed it. Suddenly, a large palm came at his waist. His warm palms were pressed tightly against her delicate body through her robe. The man's low and hoarse voice floated into her ears. "Do you care that much that she's not the Holy Virgin?" Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she looked up at him. The man's beautiful peach blossom eyes shone brightly. However, no matter how seductive she was, but it lacked the tenderness when he looked at her. He was too indifferent. It was almost as if he was looking at a stranger with indifference. Yiqing Luo raised her fair fingers and bit by bit, through the golden mask, she covered his eyes. Before his hand could move, the man's large palm had already quickly clasped her wrist. It was very powerful. It seemed to be preventing her from touching him. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. However, his laughter was filled with bitterness. Of course I care. If she wasn't the saintess, who else could return you to me? Still, Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as he listened to the young lady's bitter voice. His heart felt inexplicably irritated, especially when he saw the girl forcing herself to smile in her lifeless eyes. His irritability grew even more. His brows creased as his 5 fingers clasped the young lady's face. Whether she's the saintess or not, what has it got to do with me? Moreover, isn't I right next to you? The man's strength was very powerful. Yiqing Luo was forced to meet his gaze. Chapter 2808. The young lady was smiling. There was also a faint smile in Gu Pan's charming eyes. The tone in her words was domineering and devilish. However, that ethereal voice faintly revealed an imperceptible hoarseness and bitterness. It made one's ears hurt, like thousands of fine needles, piercing fiercely into one's heart. It was the same for Dmo Xian. His heart seemed to contract fiercely. It was unbearably tight. The slender fingers which were holding the wine cup unconsciously tightened. The wine in the cup started to ripple. The surrounding lively people also quietened down. Their gazes were complicated as they looked at the two who were hugging each other. They looked so lovey-dovey. But Yin Xiaoyi and the others who had been following beside them, witnessing their feelings, how could they not tell? Between the two of them, there was no longer the deep feelings in the past. That's right. If Miao Yi wasn't the sacred maiden, what should they do with the 2 types of goo worms in the overlord's body? The atmosphere suddenly became a little gloomy. So gloomy that Dmo Xian's heart was contracting and suffocating feeling became clearer. He frowned his brows under the mask. His thin lips pursed tightly. The hand which was holding the wine cup put down heavily. Just as he was about to open his mouth, the young lady who was leaning in the man's arms suddenly raised her head. A pair of warm and soft hands cupped Dmo Xian's face before he could even react. Dmo Xian frowned, but didn't push the young lady's hands away. The young lady tilted her head. Her gorgeous face surfaced a tenacious and unyielding smile. So, my dear overlord, I will definitely let your eyes completely only see me. Dmo Xian swallowed the words which were at the tip of his tongue. His quiet gaze met with Yiqing Luo's. Yiqing Luo's hand sent his face and immediately crashed into his arms. It's all right if you're not willing to be the sacred maiden. No matter who the sacred maiden is, it's all right. At most, he would just use some tricks. When Miao Yi walked down the selection stage, her gaze was always on Yiqing Luo. And naturally, she saw the interaction between Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. The environment she grew up in had given her keen senses. Miao Yi naturally saw through Yiqing Luo's momentary loss of composure earlier. Her feet suddenly felt as if they were being pressed down by a 1,000-pound boulder. She could not move her feet. If she couldn't become the Holy Maiden, she wouldn't be able to enter the Holy Maiden Pavilion, and she wouldn't be able to get rid of the love goo and the heart separation goo for Dizun. Qing Luo had done so many things for her. He protected her in everything. He also used his actions to show that he would become her backer. But this was how he repaid Qing Luo. She didn't even care about Qing Luo's extravagant request. She gave up on the saintess selection. Qing Luo didn't stop her, nor did she blame her. He didn't force her to return to the selection stage. Instead, he respected her choice. She had never done anything for Qing Luo. This time, was he going to disappoint Qing Luo again? Miao Yi's feet could no longer move. The 2 hands hanging by the side of his body clenched and clenched. It was as if he had gone through countless internal struggles. In the end, Miao Yi closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and turned around resolutely. She once again walked towards the direction of the selection stage. Once again. Instantly, the public square was in an uproar. Numerous people were paying attention to Miao Yi's actions. At this moment, they didn't understand what Miao Yi was trying to do. Yiqing Luo took one look and saw through Miao Yi's thoughts. Chapter 2809. Miao Yi turned her head back and saw Yiqing Luo walking towards her. Her eyes were slightly red as her throat tightened. Qing Luo. I have no intention of forcing you to become the saintess. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and gently placed it on Miao Yi's shoulder. So you don't have to suffer yourself. Miao Yi's lips trembled and her voice was hoarse. The Overlord he. No matter if you're the sacred maiden or not, I won't let anything happen to Xian. This isn't something you should consider. Yiqing Luo interrupted her words. You becoming the sacred maiden is just a little more convenient. But Miao Yi's voice was getting hotter and hotter. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she patted her shoulder. No buts. I don't know what happened between you and the Miao tribe's holy maiden. If you don't want to be the holy maiden, if you don't want to have anything to do with her, then don't be the holy maiden. Miao Yi's long eyelashes fluttered. Faintly, it was mixed with traces of sparkling and translucent crystals. Yiqing Luo smiled even more warmly as she raised her hand and rubbed her head. If you have nowhere to go, there's still my place. The World Mercenary Group needs a Miao Gu genius. Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't soft at all. His words were clearly transmitted to the elders on the selection platform. The elders panicked. Miss Yi, this won't do. This is our Miao tribe's genius. You can't take it away. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she squinted at that elder with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Now it's not me who wants to bring Yi away, but your Miao tribe cannot tolerate Yi. Her voice was calm and a little cold. It was hard to tell what she was feeling. The elder was rendered speechless, unable to retort at all. He anxiously looked at the elders beside him, then at Miao Ji. It had been a long time since a Miao Gu genius had appeared in their Miao tribe. It wasn't easy for a genius to be born. How could they bear to let her go? How could they bear to let her join a mercenary group with her talent? However, the saintess refused to budge. They didn't know what to say to make Miao Yi stay. Let's go. Seeing that the elders had all quietened down, Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh as she grabbed Miao Yi's arm and walked towards the direction of the seating area. The elders wanted to chase after him to stop him, but he had no stance to take. He watched helplessly as Yiqing Luo dragged Miao Yi away. Miao Yi was held for a few steps and her footsteps paused. No way, Qing Luo, I cannot give up. Yiqing Luo also stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at her. Miao Yi lowered her eyes, pursed her lips and said in a hoarse voice, I can't just leave like this. Why? Yiqing Luo released her hand and asked softly. Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered. There are many reasons. I've never done anything for you, but you have always encouraged me, taught me to grow, and helped me a lot. I can't ignore the poison in His Majesty's body. Who said you haven't done anything for me? Yiqing Luo bent her finger and flicked it hard on Miao Yi's forehead. That time when Miao Rongrong father and daughter duo planted the gu on Xian. If it wasn't for your timely arrival, the first person Xian saw when he opened his eyes would absolutely not be me. She curled her lips and her eyes shot towards Mo Xian's direction. After that, he will become estranged from me. And because of the love gu, he will fall in love with another woman. Chapter 2810. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yi's unable to refute expression as she solemnly patted her shoulder. So the reason why Xian was still able to allow me to get close to him when he was poisoned by the centrifugal gu is all because of you. Miao Yi was speechless. What he said made so much sense that she almost believed him. The two of them lowered their voices and spoke very softly. No one could hear what they were saying. They could only see Yiqing Luo patting Miao Yi's shoulder while saying something. Miao Yi's expression was very subtle, as though he was moved by Yiqing Luo's words. The judging elder who was the closest thought that Miao Yi had agreed to join the World Mercenary Group, and could no longer hold it in as he took a big step forward. No way, no way. Miss Miao, this Miao Gu genius. This elder will definitely not let her go. As he spoke, he reached out and grabbed Miao Yi's arm. His white beard fluttered in the wind. Miss Yi, no matter what, Miss Miao is a member of our Miao tribe. Even if she was not the holy maiden, she was the future leader of the Miao tribe. You can't take her away, you can't. With that, the judging elder pulled Miao Yi behind him. Miao Yi was still confused. Yi Qingluo's lips curled as she smiled lightly. If she's not willing, I naturally won't bring her away. But she paused for a moment and glanced in Miao Ji's direction. She was still laughing, but there was a hint of warning in her laughter. If he wants to leave, no one can stop me. The judging elder's face stiffened, and he pulled Miao Yi back a few steps. Then he turned around and tried to persuade her. Miss Miao, do you really want to give up everything in the Miao tribe, the place where you grew up freely, and leave your hometown? There's no need for this kind of place to grow up, Yi Qingluo said coldly. The judging elder was once again rendered speechless. The other elders of the Miao tribe also lowered their heads. They had no way to refute Yi Qingluo's words. Miao Yi's days in the Miao tribe were indeed not any days worth reminiscing. The elders were also very clear about this. After Miao Yi escaped from the Miao tribe, because of the ancient Gu king, the Miao tribe hunted him down in all sorts of ways. They even massacred an entire village for it. If they were in his shoes, they would not have a good impression of the Miao tribe either. Even if Miao Yi gave up on the Miao tribe, that was a very normal choice. All the elders lowered their heads in silence. Even the judging elder who was grabbing Miao Yi's wrist unconsciously loosened his grip in guilt. Miao Yi took a few steps back and covered her wrist. Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she smiled at her. Do you want to leave the Miao tribe with me, or to prove your hard work and ability, to fight for the position of sacred maiden? Miao Yi was still stunned. Yi Qingluo didn't rush him. The square fell into silence once again. About the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. The silent Miao Yi's eyelashes fluttered again, and a trace of spirit returned. She slowly fixed the focal length onto Yi Qingluo. His eyes shone with an extremely bright light. Obviously, he had made up his mind. Miao Yi said. When she spat out a word, a woman's steady and dignified voice floated from behind, instantly suppressing the entire atmosphere. When did I say that I'm going to force you to leave the Miao tribe, and not allow you to take part in the sacred maiden selection? It was Miao Ji. Chapter 28:11. The elders' gazes swiftly turned towards Miao Ji. Their eyes were filled with joy. Sacred Maiden had finally spoken out. Sacred Maiden had finally spoken out to retain eldest young Miss Miao. The judging elder was the first to jump out. Right. Sacred Maiden had never said anything about forcing eldest young Miss Miao to leave the Miao tribe. Miss Yi, you'd better return eldest young Miss Miao to our Miao tribe. Saying that, he grabbed Miao Yi's wrist and hurriedly pulled her back onto the selection stage. Miao Yi. She really didn't know since when did she become so popular. Standing on the selection stage again, she faced Miao Ji once again. Miao Yi's feelings were somewhat complicated. Her brows creased as she stared at Miao Ji's expressionless face for some time. The two of them didn't speak to break the silence. Miao Yi's brows creased even tighter as she turned her gaze towards Yi Qingluo, who was below the selection stage. But she saw that Yi Qingluo had already turned around and returned to DM Moxian's side. Noticing her delivery of the gaze, Yi Qingluo raised her eyes as she gave her a mischievous smile. Miao Yi's pupils quivered. She instantly understood. Actually, Yi Qingluo had long seen through her unwillingness. She saw that she wanted to prove her own strength. She saw that she wasn't willing to give up the sacred maiden's position. Yi Qingluo specially walked out, not because she really wanted to bring her away from the Miao tribe, but she was telling her to choose a path that she really wanted to walk on. Miao Yi's eyes turned red once again. Her eyelashes were wet. The warmth in her heart was like a great courage, encouraging her. Miao Yi's eyes gradually became resolute. There was no longer a hint of confusion or compromise. Sacred Maiden. She opened her mouth again. Her voice was as calm as water, neither fast nor slow. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you. Miao Ji, who had been calm all this while, immediately froze when she heard these words. Miao Ji's hand froze on the table. Her eyes stared at Miao Yi without blinking, as though she couldn't believe that Miao Yi would actually apologize to her. I'm sorry. Perhaps I've misunderstood you too deeply, so whenever you appear, I feel like you're targeting me. Miao Yi's next sentence extinguished the fire in Miao Ji's heart. The light in Miao Ji's eyes gradually dimmed. Miao Yi's tone was still calm. Since the Holy Maiden does not intend to use her power for personal gain, then, what is the deeper meaning behind the Holy Maiden selection ceremony? Miao Ji's eyes flickered dimly. The elders began to feel uneasy again. They really couldn't understand the complicated relationship between the Saintess and the Saintess candidate. Why was it so tense? The Saintess did not speak. The Saintess candidate did not say anything. They didn't know what to say. Could it be that he had to quietly wait for the strange atmosphere between the two of them to subside? Even if they could wait, the guests participating in the Saintess selection ceremony would not wait. His heart was filled with apprehension. Miao Ji finally opened her mouth. I'm here to meet the future sacred maiden of Miao tribe so that I can ascend to the upper realm without worry. She paused for a long time before saying the last 5 words. Miao Yi's gaze also had some changes. After floating for a moment, everything returned to calmness. In her eyes there was a trace of ridicule. Chapter 28:12. Whether you go to the upper realm or not, it has nothing to do with me. Miao Yi interrupted Miao Ji's explanation. Since you want to see the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe, now that you have seen her, can you leave? Miao Ji suddenly stood up. Her eyes were filled with hurt and helplessness. I don't have much time left. Why do you keep me at a distance? Miao Yi clenched her fists. Her slender fingers turned white. But she still said, it doesn't matter. Miao Ji looked at Miao Yi's expressionless face and slowly sat back on the wooden chair. She let out a long sigh and closed her eyes weakly. She said word by word. Since you said that I am making things difficult for you, well, you just have to answer my last question. You will be the only Holy Maiden candidate in the selection of the Holy Maiden. The elders held their breaths. The last question of the Holy Maiden? The way to contract the ancient Gu King? This question, even if it was the Saintess herself, she would not be able to answer it. The Holy Maiden seemed to treat Miao Yi like an elder looking at a junior. Shouldn't she support Miao Yi to become the Holy Maiden? How could she use this question to block Miao Yi's way? Just when the elders were in a dilemma, Miao Ji looked at Miao Xuedan and Miao Zhilian. Or you two can answer? We don't know. The 2 Holy Maiden candidates trembled and shook their heads. They had heard about the existence of the ancient Gu King through hearsay. They were wondering if there was an ancient Gu King in the Miao tribe. How could they know the way to contract the ancient Gu King? Miao Ji raised her eyebrows. Oh, that means you don't want to enter the last round? Miao Xuedan and Miao Zhilian were speechless. That was what they thought. Miao Ji had extinguished all their hopes. Miao Ji saw that they did not speak, so she looked at Miao Yi again. There was a strange light in her eyes. What about you? Do you want to enter the last round? Miao Yi frowned. She said one word. She bit her lower lip. The expression on his face was dark and gloomy. Miao Ji didn't give her time to think. She straightened up slightly and said, What? Is this a difficult question to answer? When Miao Ji said this, his eyes were fixed on Miao Yi's expression. He did not want to miss the slightest change in Miao Yi's expression. If you want to, then answer the question I just asked. If you can answer, you pass. If you can't, you'll be eliminated. She continued. It's just a matter of whether you can answer it or not. Miao Yi clenched her fists and suddenly laughed softly. Yeah, it's just 2 choices. After laughing, Miao Yi raised her head, and the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking smile. Then he slowly said word by word, there's only one way to form a contract with the ancient Gu King. You have to get the ancient Gu King's recognition, withstand the Gu poison of the ancient Gu King entering your body, and let the ancient Gu King suck your blood to form a contract. The crowd was in an uproar. Was this how the ancient Gu king contracted? It sounded like the contract was very simple. Of course, the people of the Miao tribe knew it very well. If the contract method was used on ordinary Gu poison. Chapter 28:13. But if the contracted partner was the ancient venomous worm king, it was simply impossible. The ancient venomous worm king was the king of the venomous worms that had existed since ancient times. To obtain the recognition of the ancient venomous worm king, it was simply a fantasy. Moreover, the ancient venomous worm king was able to become the leader of the venomous worms was because the ancient venomous worm king's own toxicity could instantly kill all the venomous worms in the world. Such toxicity, no one's body could withstand it. Not to mention letting the ancient venomous worm king suck their own blood essence. So who could prove? Was Miao Yi's reply true or false? All right. Just as the crowd was discussing, Miao Ji spat out a word. She slowly stood up and looked at Miao Yi's stubborn and elegant face as a gratified smile surfaced on her face. Miao Yi, congratulations on becoming the last sacred maiden candidate. The elders had just finished Miao Ji's words. They clapped excitedly. The Miao tribesmen were in an uproar. Some were happy for Miao Yi. Some doubted Miao Yi. The entire public square became extremely lively at this moment. All sorts of discussions were incessant. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, Yiqing Luo, who was thinking of ways to take advantage of a man, squinted her eyes as she looked at everything in front of her. It could be said that it was within her expectations. Her feeling was right. This Miao tribe's sacred maiden indeed had complicated feelings towards Miao Yi. If she didn't guess wrongly, the relationship between these two was definitely not simple. Moreover, a long time ago, their relationship was absolutely very close. Miao Ji's appearance, as well as the questions she raised. It looked as though she was making things difficult for Miao Yi. It looked as though she was forcing Miao Yi. It looked as though she was making things difficult for Miao Yi. But in actual fact, she was paving the way for Miao Yi. When Miao Yi escaped from the Miao tribe, she brought the ancient venomous worm king away. This matter was not a secret among the Miao tribe's upper echelons. If Miao Yi intentionally hid it, it would make those tribesmen feel that Miao Yi had ulterior motives towards the Miao tribe. He might as well bring this matter up in the open. Moreover, if the news of Miao Yi and the ancient venomous worm king's contract was spread, it would only strengthen Miao Yi's position in the Miao tribe. Miao tribe leader, Miao tribe holy maiden. These two positions were unshakable. Why, aren't you excited to rush up the stage and drag your little sister away? Dmo Xian looked down at the satisfied young lady in his arms. If it was a normal day, when they saw their own sisters being wronged or threatened, they would not be able to control themselves. Yiqing Luo had already rushed up and stood out bravely. At this moment, she was actually nestled in his arms obediently. That was strange. I'm not blind. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him and her little hand was on his firm abs as she pinched it fiercely. I can tell that sacred maiden is doing this for Yi's own good. As she spoke, she restlessly adjusted her position in his arms. Her hands exerted more force on his waist, moving up and down. The sacred maiden must be trying to stabilize Yi's position in the Miao tribe before she ascends to the upper realm. She intends to hand over everything in the Miao tribe to Yi alone. Oh. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as a dangerous emotion started to spread beneath his eyes. His palm suddenly flipped over as he fiercely clasped the soft little hand that was caressing around his waist. The young lady's soft skin felt warm and soft to the touch. His eyes started to darken. Chapter 28:14. I'm not interested in the Miao tribe's matter. The man's hoarse voice was melodious and filled with magnetism, seducing her tightly. You're so restless and trying to seduce me. Are you so impatient that you want me to sleep with you? His fingers were slightly calloused, and the touch on her face was extremely gentle. Yiqing Luo's face revealed a trace of satisfaction, like a cat's expression. The breath she breathed out was scorching hot and tempting. Her pink lips parted slightly as she laughed softly. Just a few touches and the overlord reacted? Is the overlord craving for me too much, or is it too easy to react? Perhaps it was the man's fingertips that caressed her so comfortably. When the young lady spoke, there was a trace of satisfaction in her murmur. The ending sound rose up, extremely devilish, like a seductive little hook. Bit by bit, it hooked a certain part of her heart. Mo Xian's pupils suddenly contracted. Suddenly, a hand that was gently caressing her face pinched her chin. The man bent down and got closer to her. But he didn't kiss her. Just that the close distance was filled with danger. His hoarse voice warned, "Yiqing Luo, don't try to provoke me." Mo Xian's 5 fingers were a little strong. So strong that her chin felt a little painful. Yiqing Luo frowned as she endured the pain on her chin and forcefully pulled out an evil smile. Her charming eyes curved. "Overlord, are you angry because I've hit the mark?" Mo Xian's eyes were still flickering as he stared at Yiqing Luo's face without blinking. After some time, he loosened his 5 fingers. He also shifted his line of sight away. He just sat on the soft cushion, his long legs half bent as his deep and gloomy eyes stared ahead, as though he didn't want to say another word to Yiqing Luo. Such an attitude made Yiqing Luo's mood improve greatly. He didn't deny it. That proved that she had indeed hit the mark on his thoughts. Under the condition of being poisoned by the centrifugal worm, he could still have such a strong reaction towards her. It was enough to prove how important she was in Mo Xian's heart. Even if it was the centrifugal worm, it would absolutely not be able to separate their hearts. No matter what the Miao tribesmen thought, the saintess had personally spoken. He personally confirmed that Miao Yi's answer was completely correct. The last candidate to become the holy maiden was Miao Yi. Tomorrow he would go to the ancient Gu King's land to carry out the Gu King's recognition ceremony. Soon after, about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, today's selection ceremony was officially over. The crowd dispersed one after another. Miao Yi walked off the stage without looking back. The judging elder immediately caught up to her. "Miss Miao, wait. The other elders also followed closely behind. Miao Yi was surrounded by a few elders. Perhaps it was because her mood had been affected, but there was not a hint of a smile on her face. "Miss Miao, tomorrow is the recognition ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms. When will you?" The 4th elder stammered, as if he was choosing his words carefully. The other elders also looked at Miao Yi with hopeful expressions. They all knew. Back then, Miao Yi had taken the ancient Gu King and escaped from the Miao tribe. Now Miao Yi had returned to the Miao tribe. She had never explained anything about the ancient Gu King from the beginning to the end. The ancient Gu King was the lifeline of the Miao tribe. What did Miao Yi do when she brought the ancient Gu King away? Was the ancient Gu King still with Miao Yi? Chapter 28:15. A calm and dignified voice rang out. The white-robed elder who had been standing beside Miaoji stroked his white beard and walked out. As soon as the old man spoke, the surrounding elders quietened down. All of them stood up straight. His brows were filled with respect. The white-robed elder smiled kindly and said, "The recognition ceremony of the ancient Gu King will be held tomorrow. Send the ancient Gu King back to the place of the King of Venomous Worms, and we'll talk about it after the ceremony. What do you think?" His tone was also very gentle. He did not force Miao Yi to hand over the ancient Gu King. Miao Yi looked up at the white-robed elder and chuckled. "Are you afraid that I won't return the ancient Gu King to the Miao tribe?" The white-robed elder, who was the great elder of the Miao tribe, smiled like a Maitreya Buddha and said, "Yi, what are you talking about? You are the future leader of the Miao tribe and the only candidate for the saintess. Everything in the Miao tribe will be yours, including the ancient Gu King. If that's the case, you don't have to ask any more questions." Miao Yi did not give face to the great elder and rejected him directly. "The ancient Gu King is with me. I will invite him out tomorrow." After saying that, he pushed aside the elders surrounding him and walked down the selection stage. The few elders were stunned on the spot. The 4th elder looked displeased and said, "Isn't Miss Miao too arrogant? She seems to be hostile towards us." The 5th elder frowned and said worriedly, If Miss Meow refuses to accept us, it will not be good for the future of the Meow tribe. The other elders looked at each other and lowered their heads in silence. Give her some time, and she will believe in your loyalty to the Meow tribe. Miao Ji sighed as she watched Miao Yi leave. She stood up and a hint of melancholy appeared on her gentle face. Rest assured, Lady Holy Maiden, we will definitely assist young Miss Meow. Seeing the Holy Maiden speak, the elders immediately raised their hands and placed them on their shoulders in salute. Miao Ji smiled and said, Yi is too stubborn. When I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will have to ask you to take good care of Yi. Miao Ji's words were also indirectly telling the elders. Miao Yi indeed had a close relationship with her, and she indeed supported Miao Yi. The few elders hurriedly lowered their heads and responded in unison. Miao Ji thanked him and walked down the stage. Great Elder Miao immediately followed closely behind. Miao Ji stopped in her tracks and raised her hand to stop Great Elder Miao from following her. She said calmly, This saintess still has matters to attend to. Great Elder Miao froze for a moment before stopping in his tracks. Miao Ji continued walking forward. The direction she was heading towards was not the way back. Instead, in the seats, the first row on the right. Miao Ji walked at a steady pace. He had barely taken a few steps when he was surrounded by a few people dressed in luxurious clothes. Standing at the very front was the pitiful Miao Jillian, who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. The people behind him were Miao Jillian's parents and elders. Saintess, please. Miao Jillian's sobbing voice sounded aggrieved. However, Miao Jillian did not have time to finish her words. Miao Ji glanced at her indifferently. Her gaze was very indifferent. It was just a glance, but Miao Jillian's tears welled up in her eyes and could not fall. This saintess hates people who don't keep their promises. Since you agreed to the bet, then bear the consequences yourself. Chapter 28:16. Miao Jillian's face was ashen as she laid limply on the ground. She covered her face as tears gushed out. She heard her mother's grumbling voice. I told you, Sacred Maiden, and that slut's relationship is not ordinary, so what's the use of begging, Sacred Maiden? Our family's face has been thrown away by you. Cry, 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 you only know how to cry. What's the use of raising you up and nurturing you so painstakingly? You don't have any foresight at all. Her father berated her furiously. Miao Jillian felt her ears buzzing as her eyes turned black. Under this endless criticism and grumbling, she fainted. At the same time, Yi Qingluo frowned slightly as she looked at Miao Yi, who was walking towards the Sacred Maiden's candidate room. She could tell that Miao Yi was feeling down. She stood up and chased after her. An arm stretched out. It directly pulled her into his embrace. The man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. History was always shockingly similar. Yi Qingluo had learnt her lesson this time as she conserved her energy and didn't struggle. I'm only going over to take a look at her. When her emotions have stabilized, I'll be back. The man didn't give any response after she finished her words. The hand which was on her waist didn't move at all. Yi Qingluo was helpless as she followed his hand and found a comfortable position in his arms. Then, Overlord, will you go with me? Dmo Xian still didn't reply. His long arm tightened around her waist. He lowered his head and planted his lips on her earlobe. His voice was low and husky, extremely sexy. Have you forgotten something? Forgotten what? Yi Qingluo blinked her eyes blankly. Above her head floated the man's low husky laughter. But this laughter, Yi Qingluo inexplicably sensed something. A dangerous aura. Yi Qingluo's petite body trembled as she instinctively sensed danger and wanted to push the man away. But at the next moment, the man directly opened his mouth and bit her earlobe. Yi Qingluo moaned as her little hand gripped the man's robe tightly. What are you doing? Yi Qingluo's face was instantly dyed red. She really wanted to break free from the man's restraint. This restraint seemed to have a bad taste as it tempted her, especially when the man bit her earlobe. She was unable to control the numbness that she felt as if she had been electrocuted. Her mind went blank for a moment. He felt as if all the energy in his body had been sucked dry. His heart was thumping, beating faster and faster. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. Before the ceremony, someone seemed to have promised this lord something? Dmo Xian grabbed the back of her head, preventing her from evading. His teeth were still biting on Yi Qingluo's earlobe. As he spoke, his warm breath constantly drilled into her ears. Yi Qingluo's petite body kept trembling. Her whole body was limp, and her eyes were wet with tears. She was about to go crazy from the torture. Her head was spinning. What did I promise you? Do whatever I want with you, including sleeping with you. Dmo Xian's voice was low, and he sounded very happy. The young lady's innocent and honest response made Dmo Xian's mood improve greatly. His big palm clasped Yi Qingluo's waist tightly as he let go of her ear and laughed. This lord has already done what I promised you. Next, it's time to collect the repayment. Yi Qingluo struggled a little. This we can talk about it later. This lord has no patience. Dmo Xian rejected decisively. Chapter 28:17. No. Dmo Xian still rejected. Yi Qingluo. Damn it. Could they still have a pleasant conversation? After a moment of confrontation, Yi Qingluo was defeated. Then what do you want? Go back to the room, deal with you. Dmo Xian replied very decisively. Clearly, these words sounded very normal. But when it came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, it inexplicably carried a kind of seductive, colorful meaning. Yi Qingluo clenched her teeth, stretched out her hand and pinched the man's tight waist. I lose to you. I'll go with you and let you deal with me, all right? Saying that, she twisted her little body and turned her head to the side in a muffled voice, expressing that she was extremely angry now. While she was angry, Yi Qingluo didn't forget to let Chi-Chi out. Then she gave Chi-Chi the instruction to accompany Miao Yi. Chi-Chi was such a small ball and looked adorable. It should make Miao Yi feel better. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes, looking at Chi-Chi's lightning-fast figure. His voice was deep. I can't tell that this lord's woman is not a simple person. Yi Qingluo gloomily shook her head and snorted. It's good that you know so. Overlord, what you need to do is to hug my thigh and listen to me obediently. The young lady's voice was sullen and sundra, which made Dmo Xian's gaze became gentler. He laughed hoarsely, his rosy lips were even more gorgeous. This suggestion is not bad, but let this lord try first, to see if this thigh of yours is good enough. While speaking, he had already grabbed the young lady's waist and carried her in his arms. There were too many people watching the show. He loved to tease the young lady in his arms. And he didn't have the bad taste of letting others watch the show. Especially, he didn't want anyone to see the shy young lady. Dmo Xian carried Yi Qingluo and stood up. An anxious voice was heard from behind. Overlord, please hold on. It was accompanied by urgent footsteps. Dmo Xian pretended not to hear it as he walked forward. Yi Qingluo could tell that it was Miaoji's voice. Thinking of Miao Yi, she tugged Dmo Xian's collar. It's sacred maiden, put me down. Dmo Xian pursed his lips, apparently displeased. However, he still stopped in his tracks. Miaoji happened to catch up with them. She took a look at the young lady in Dmo Xian's arms and hung her head down awkwardly. Miss Yi, I have something to tell you. Do you have the time? Yes. No. Two voices spoke at the same time. Yi Qingluo glared at him furiously. Dmo Xian, stop fooling around. If the holy maiden is looking for me, she must have something important to do. Don't tell me this lord's matter is not important. Dmo Xian sneered. Miaoji felt even more embarrassed. Looking at the way the overlord was hugging Yi Qingluo, he was looking at the atmosphere between the two of them. Miaoji more or less understood that she had disturbed the overlord's good time. However, she didn't have any extra time to wait for the next chance to talk to Yi Qingluo. He thought of the way Miao Yi looked at him. Miaoji took a deep breath and spoke again. Miss Yi, I'll only take up a little bit of your time. If the overlord is worried, you can come along too. Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips moved slightly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, the young lady's eyes were sharp and her soft little hand directly covered Dmo Xian's mouth. The young lady's other hand encircled the man's neck as she leaned close to the man's ear. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.